Before we begin, I'd like to hear what everybody did over their break.
Well, I went to the Grand Canyon with my brother and sister.
Go enough about your damn families. Didn't anybody spend the break alone, watching reruns and eating cheese doodles while an unfathomable emptiness permeated their shriveled souls?
Ladies and gentlemen, Bill of America!
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Banal of America Audio with your host, Tim Banal.
What is going on, my friends? This is Tim Banal of banalofamerica.com with another edition of BOAA Audio Season 5. It is the second half of our double episode week here as BOAA Audio returns to the proverbial airwaves. We held the episode back a little bit, a couple days, because I wanted to let the baseball special sit up there for a while before we unleashed this second episode of the week. I will talk all about what's going on here on the episode in just a moment. Let's take care of some BOAA Audio in-house notes, which I eschewed on the baseball special. We got some sad news and we have some happy news, so we will take care of the sad news first. Want to dedicate this week's edition of the program to the late, great Jerry E. Smith. He passed away during the month of March while BOAA Audio was on hiatus. Jerry appeared on the program way back in Season 1 as well as in Season 2. He was a really cool guy, a really great guy, funny as hell. I had such a blast talking to him. I highly recommend people go back and check out those interviews, especially the final half hour or so of that Season 1 interview. I believe it was a two-part episode, because we talked all about Jerry's friendship with the late Jim Keith and really just talked about Jerry's life leading up to his entrance into the world of esoterica and found out just a whole bunch of stuff about him. In the past few years, Jerry had really become kind of a presence online, especially on Facebook, became good friends with BOA's Leslie. I know she was terribly saddened by the passing of Jerry E. Smith, as was I. So, thank you for the appearances on the program, Jerry. Thanks for the memories. I'm going to miss you an awful lot. I wish I had another chance to talk to you, and I will see you someday in the future, my friend, wherever you may be. All right, let's turn that frown upside down and handle the happy news here. We got double congratulations going out to two contest winners from the official BOA forum, theusofE.com. First one goes out to Bob, also known on the forum as Not a Tame Bob. He was the winner of the BOA March Madness contest, and the other congratulations goes out to none other than Jeremy Vaney of Paratopia fame and Lostcast fame for winning the WrestleMania Pick'em contest, an astounding 9 out of 10 for Jeremy on that one. So congratulations to Bob and Jeremy. Now that we've taken care of the in-house notes, let's take a look at what we've got on tap for you here this week on the program. In total, we've got 3 guests for you. First, a lengthy interview with Bill and Nancy Birnes of UFO Hunters, UFO Magazine, and Future Theater fame. And then to close out the program, we've got a mini stop and chat interview with Micah A. Hanks. I'll talk about the Micah A. Hanks interview in just a moment. First, let me preview what we've got on tap for you with Bill and Nancy Birnes. This is really a fun conversation. I had a blast doing this interview. I envisioned it as a fly-on-the-wall look at Bill and Nancy Birnes, dubbed it Dinner with the Birneses, and as the conversation progressed, I kind of started to get a feel for how the flow was going and really let Bill and Nancy play off of each other because they have just amazing chemistry. So for folks who don't like me, and I know you're listening, I'm not sure why, but there are people out there who don't like me and still listen to the show. You'll be happy to know that I barely talk on this episode except more towards the end because I got out of the way once I saw what Bill and Nancy were cooking because it was really something special. Here in the conversation, we touch on a whole bunch of different topics. The main Areas of discussion are as follows: the demise of UFO Hunters, Bill and Nancy's entrance into the world of ufology with The Day After Roswell, how Nancy's role as editor of UFO Magazine came about, their perspective on the current state of ufology, and a whole bunch of side roads and tangents that we travel down, including stuff on Jamie Shandera, TWA Flight 800, some of the strange ufological sources that send information to Bill and Nancy, Bill Birnes' family's remarkable history in the entertainment world, and Bill and Nancy's cameo on the recent Dwayne Johnson film Race to Witch Mountain. As I said, fly on the wall. It really gives you a chance to see what it would be like if me and Bill and Nancy went out to dinner one night and we just plopped the recorder down on the table. It's pretty close to how the conversation would unfold, and I think folks will enjoy that quite a bit. At the end of the show, stick around because we've got a half-hour conversation with Micah A. Hanks. He's pulling a stop and chat on us and popping onto the program to talk about his new book, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. We'll touch on DMT, monatomic gold, mystery cults, the psychomantium, Michael Jackson and mirrors, and much, much more. Cool stuff there with Micah A. Hanks. Definitely want to stay tuned for that at the end of the program. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Bill and Nancy Birnes, allow me to give you some background on them. Since there's two guests and they both have lengthy bios, I'm going to touch on really quickly their stuff and sort of parse it down a little bit. Their full bios can be found, of course, on the show page where you are digging this interview at BOA. First, Bill Birnes. He is a New York Times bestselling author, a magazine publisher, and a New York literary publishing agent who has written and edited over 25 books and encyclopedias. He's the publisher of the nationally distributed UFO Magazine, co-authored 2 books with George Norrie, Worker in the Light and Journey to the Light, and perhaps most famously co-authored The Day After Roswell with Colonel Philip Corso. Most folks in the mainstream may know Bill Birnes as one of the stars of the History Channel series UFO Hunters. Meanwhile, Nancy Birnes is a writer, publisher, and editor. She graduated summa cum laude from Princeton University, founded Shadowlawn Press in 1983, and in 2003 co-founded Filament Books, an electronic book club, in partnership with eBook Technologies. She's the editor of 2 editions of the McGraw-Hill Personal Computer Programming Encyclopedia, and has written 2 cookbooks. She's also a fiction writer, and her first novel, Cleaning House, has been translated into 6 foreign languages and has been published in 9 countries. She's currently a director and the editor-in-chief of UFO Magazine, an international monthly publication, as well as a host on Future Theater, a weekly radio program. Together, their websites are ufomag.com and futuretheater.com. Those should be pretty easy for you to find and figure out, but I'll tell them to you once again: ufomag.com, all one word, and futuretheater.com, that's all one word as well. Bill and Nancy have launched their own podcast. It's been up for the last couple of weeks. I highly recommend folks check it out, and that is what we've been talking about here with futuretheater.com. That's the website for the program. And I have a feeling after you listen to this week's edition of BOA Audio, you are definitely going to want to check out Future Theater to hear more of Bill and Nancy together. And now, I feel like I've been talking way too much here at the beginning of the show, but it's our first real serious edition of the program back, so there's a lot to talk about. But all the talking's done now, so let's get down to business. Without any further ado, my friends, let's rock and roll. This interview was recorded on March 12, 2010. Bill and Nancy Birnes discuss the world of ufology on BOA Audio, Season 5. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of All of America Audio. I'm very excited about this week's program because we're doing something a little bit different here. We've got 2 guests on the show. We've got ufology's power couple, Bill and Nancy Birnes, on the show together here, and I'm not sure if they've ever done an interview together before, which I think might be a first time, and that's exciting in and of itself. And Nancy's never been on the show before, so I'm looking forward to getting her on the record here on BOA Audio. Bill was on a couple of years ago. We had a great time, and I'm kind of coming at this with the idea of, this is sort of like dinner with the Birneses, and we're just going to chill out and have some down-home conversation about the world of ufology and the world of esoterica and sort of laid-back deal as if we, just went out to dinner and now we're having some drinks. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, they are behind UFO Magazine, which you can find at ufomag.com. Bill's the co-author of Day After Roswell, and he's also the co-author of 2 books with George Norrie, Worker in the Light and Journey to the Light, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And, of course, he was one of the stars of UFO Hunters as well. So welcome to the show, Bill Birnes. Welcome back. And Nancy, welcome to BOA Audio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay. We made it.
Yes, we've all survived. Now, I guess we should probably start with sort of just tackling the elephant in the room here, which is the UFO Hunters program. Of course, we know that it got canceled this past October, which is really kind of strange because from what I had heard, in the last year leading up to the cancellation is they were all gung-ho about it, and they were having Bill tape seasons back to back, and it was like they were all in on this thing, and now all of a sudden, next thing you know, poof, a lot of foot dragging and sort of goes out with a whimper, which was kind of disappointing, obviously, and very surprising. So, what all went down with that?
Well, there were 2 things at work at the same time, and if you saw the Monster Quest last night featuring Frank Ficino and Stan Friedman, talking about the Braxton County Monster, the Flatwoods Monster, and then the Lloyd Pye segment talking about the Star Child, you could see, I think, the major difference between Monster Quest, which was our lead-in on Wednesday nights at 9, and UFO Hunters. What happened with UFO Hunters, it was a kind of a double whammy. On the one hand, we began getting very close to things that the network was told we shouldn't get too close to. I mean, we were in Dulce, New Mexico, and discovered through retired state trooper Gabe Valdez, photographs of a human-bovine combined hybrid fetus.
Oh, boy.
And people began freaking out over that. And then Nancy Talbot, whose name you might know from BLT Research, who did the work on the Bucks County trace evidence, Phyllis Budinger's, who did the work on the Betty Hill dress, did the work on the Delphos, Kansas soil. She had said that if you think you're dealing with aliens, you're out of your mind. What you're dealing with is big pharmacy and the government coming up with a whole bunch of things, cultivating human ovum in this kind of serum that comes out of these embryos. In other words, they were making I'll call them somas, for better terms, bodies for harvesting organs, for doing implants, and possibly one person from a 3-letter organization who shall go nameless suggested, for finding ways to build almost like the immortal soldier by using bovine-human hybrid organs to replace organs and kind of create, it was almost like a Dr. Frankenstein thing.
Yeah.
But that was one. We got too close to the truth on that. We took very telling photographs of Area 51, which they didn't like. And at Dugway, Arizona, we kind of sealed our fate in dealing with the material that Dave Rosenfeld, Alien Dave, gave us, showing photographs of a secret weapon that we have over Dugway, again, that was on the air, of shooting a beam into the air with kind of like UFO-type craft. We don't know whose they are, ours, theirs, nobody knows, around this beam. So we really went too far. Then the budgets were extremely high, and the more seasons we had, the more there were issues with budgets and travel and insurance and things like that, because we really were pushing the envelope. As a result, the network began turning on us while we were in the Bahamas doing the Navy base down there. And it was pretty much written in the cards that they were really mad at us for going too far. And they told us straight up that, oh, your ratings are really weak. And we were hitting ratings, by the way. Our ratings were beating Jon Stewart's Daily Show, Housewives of New York, some of the big reality shows. We were really slapping them around in terms of ratings. And then we were told, oh, in the 18 to 19-year-old demographic, you were very weak. And we were falling on the floor because we were beating our lead-in. In fact, people, they were getting more mileage out of Monster Quest in the last 15 minutes because people would tune in for UFO Hunters the following show. So they really got nasty at the end of the day. And as you could see, what they did was they took episodes that we'd done Like last night's episode with Frank Ficino was our webisode from Season 2, and it's up on the web. Folks can see it on the UFO Hunters site. They took our episodes, rehomogenized them, putting in serious skeptics to debunk the stuff that we'd already done. I mean, last night's episodes were just phenomenal when they brought the debunkers in to kind of undo what we did, and then somebody from one of the three-letter agencies said it's payback because you guys went too far, so they're making history, and ABC do payback. So those are the two issues.
Well, you know what, and I would kind of disagree just a little about the whole, you're getting too close to the truth. I think that's a glamorous thing to say, but I think if that were the case, there'd be other indications. We never got any kind of threats or, that just sounds to me like that's not necessarily the case. I think maybe it could be something very mundane. The network just got tired of that topic, which doesn't really make any sense.
No, because if they had, you wouldn't have seen the shows last night. I mean, here's a case last night where they actually took a UFO show, Frank Ficino's Shoot 'em Down book about the 1952 air war of UFOs. That's the context for the Flatwoods Monster. They removed all the UFOs and made it a monster show, and then basically made the show very hokey by saying the monster still walks.
Yeah, well, I mean, that show struck me as classic disinformation because with my limited experience in the field, I can tell you that the story behind the quote-unquote monster is a very political story. It's kind of a historical American story that we tried to do Frank's story the first season, and I say we because I've been part of this whole thing kind of in the background, and that's kind of, I think, a story that we'll bring out on our show more.
Yeah.
Not because I want the glory, but because I think the real story should come out of how the show got created and stuff. I think it's unfair that, and I guess that's part of the whole thing. What you see on TV isn't really real. When you've been part of creating a TV show and you sit and watch it in the audience, you realize, TV is really not telling you very much of the truth.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of scary when you think about it, because you want to believe something. I mean, you're paying good money for cable or good money for the set, and you want to believe what you're seeing. It's not entertaining if you feel that you're being totally lied to. So I saw some of the episodes get created and then get destroyed on the cutting room floor, and I'm sure that's what happened last night with Monster Quest. Because I know for a fact that Al Lemberg was part of the show. He's one of our columnists on the magazine.
Yeah.
And he was part of the show. He actually was on the show with his UFO Mag cap on, which was cool. But he did not expect to be on the cutting room floor. He expected, and he also, they all made friends. Here's the weird part. They made friends with all the people involved with that show. I know they had done some filming with UFO Hunters, and they all weren't as friendly. They didn't hit it off as well. So they had high hopes that because everybody was so nice to them, that this was going to be fabulous. And that's also interesting. It's sort of like you can't believe anything they tell you. When they leave, they say you did a great job, and then they go home, and then they just,
Yeah. Then
it's like getting,
oh, well, that was a dog or something. Yeah.
It's like you're getting, it's like the old-fashioned gotcha journalism, Yeah.
Yeah,
did you see the show?
The Monster Quest last night? No, I didn't.
Yeah, it was, what's so weird is that there were two big stories in the UFO world that were jammed together for that show.
Yeah, that's the strange part, yeah.
Yeah, it is strange. Because they're totally, they're literally worlds apart. Different countries, different eras, different everything. And each of them would be a normal, complete show, in a normal world.
In fact, both of them appeared. Lloyd Pye's Starchild episode was a major part of the segment in Season 3, I think our third show, Alien Intent, dealing with the science behind the Starchild skull.
Yeah, let me say this, just for Tim's edification. You probably know Lloyd Pye and the skull.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, you know how... he has there are certain characteristics of that skull that, if you're going to shoot the thing down, you got to shoot those things down because, it's like any other story. If it's not real, tell us, and we'll all go wander on and go on about our business.
Yeah.
And one of the things that UFO Hunters showed was that the brain capacity, and it was well done on UFO Hunters. It was one of the scenes I loved. The brain capacity of the Starchild skull is way bigger than the brain capacity of the regular human skull. And the way they did that was with birdseed. They had Pat and Kevin, keep pouring birdseed in until it was full, and then they measured the birdseed. They'd dump the birdseed out into measuring cups.
Yeah.
And the Starchild skull was way more brain capacity. Now, when the lady on the show last night said that the skull was distorted because it was they call it cradle boarding, which is sort of you jam a baby's head
into like a ring or something, and it shapes.
You wrap it.
Yeah.
But logically, if you were to do that to a human, you wouldn't be changing the brain capacity. Duh.
Exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't increase the density. You wouldn't increase how much space was in there. You would just misshape it.
And that's a really big deal. Yeah. So you see, and so if my goodness, everybody in UFO, if anybody saw UFO Hunters, that's a big missing link in terms of forget debunkers. Or forget, we're acting more scientific than with birdseed than the lady with they had a doctor with purple latex gloves, deep purple.
Well, here's a question that I think both of you will definitely have thoughts on. Now, okay, so the show's over with and everything. If you had it to do all over again, would you? Because I know that you got a lot of flack from people who, quite frankly, were either jealous or didn't quite understand how the television business worked, and were under the impression that Bill was sitting there in the editing bay,
right? Or
cut that,
or worse, sitting in the producing chair,
exactly,
saying who gets on and who doesn't get on. And let me just go on record as saying we have approximately right now 5 raving enemies in the world who are making it like a life's mission to be mean to us, and every single one of those people tried to be on the show, partially got on the show, ended up on the cutting room floor, etc., through no fault of Bill's, but they do blame Bill.
Exactly,
and so that's pretty cool. I won't, no need to name names, but that's ironic that every one of those people was really sweet, really nice, all psyched up, and wanted to be on the show. In some cases got filmed, and in other cases, it's sort of like, so the show created this first the book, and then the show created this cauldron of hatred for sure.
Yeah.
But of course, I'll let Bill answer, but of course I would go through it again, even though I was miserably, it was lonely for the person, the family left behind while Bill traveled. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, we are pushing versions of the show. I'm working with a number of writer-producers now at different cable channels to push versions of the show, maybe with a younger group, to do the same thing. And I'm completing a manuscript right now. Basically, it's called Aliens in America. And the premise of the manuscript is it is a UFO hotspot travel guide. Not so much a hotspot, but if you want to see famous UFO sites, for example, Howard Menger and the Highbridge incident. If you want to go to Highbridge, New Jersey, you will, and here is the case. It's in the book, the story of Howard Menger and Valiant Thor and Jill and all the Venusians who were at the Pentagon, stranger at the Pentagon, Frank Strangis and Howard Menger, 2 friends. What happened when the Space Brothers came to cure Howard Menger, son of cancer. I mean, it's all that lore from the 1950s contactee movement, but it took place 15 minutes away from where we are in Highbridge, New Jersey. So if you want to go there, this is where it is, this is where to stay, this is where to eat, this is how to get there. Betty and Barney Hill, how to get to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and go to UFO meetings at the Loaf and Ladle and things like that.
Yeah.
Going to Washington, D.C., going to Flatwood.
And your point is?
My point is I'm pushing that idea as a UFO travel show to see if maybe one of the networks will pick that up. I certainly wouldn't go traveling, but we come up with a cast and a crew to do that.
No, but I would absolutely hate that, and I would urge you not to personally spend your time, wasting your time with that sort of thing. And because I'll tell you, if you have a chance, I think you should do the exact same show, only do it better. I really think that if you could get, if you're lucky enough to get Pat and you're lucky enough to get Ted, and lots of other people who, I mean, there's so many stories and so many experts, you know, and I think you should do the exact. I think that, you know, let's be grateful they created such a nice little frame and such a nice little template. So I would say do the exact show, only do it better, if at all, you know. And then of course, if we can't do that, you could then say, yeah, there's something.
Well, we are pushing, well, as you know, like we are pushing that same show with other cable networks, the exact same UFO Hunters show, maybe slightly changing the name because nobody really trademarked. In fact, they can't trademark the name because UFO Magazine owns the name, the trademark for UFO and television. But we are setting up that very same show with a number of networks.
I think the fact that nobody came in and scooped it up, that you have sold things your whole life in the entertainment worlds. You've sold movies, TV, books, all kinds of stuff. The fact that you have not been able to sell the next show is kind of troubling and worrisome. It's not as though you have to step back and say, what have we done wrong in this case? Because we were all really becoming a smooth-oiled engine toward the end of this. The shows were really good. People didn't like Kevin that much. Some people loved Kevin, and et cetera. But geez, rather than what did you do wrong, it's sort of like what is going on behind the scenes. And of course, it could be all Hollywood. And Tim, you know a little about that. It could be all Hollywood, you know, like the money wasn't spent properly by people in charge of the money. And I don't know whether you can say that. I don't know whether that's legal.
Well, sure you can. I mean, you can say that. You can say that there were budget issues with the show and that the network may have been concerned over the way items in the budget were disposed of or allocated. I know that insurance became a really big issue during the course of the show with some of the flying scenes we had, the helicopter scenes that were cut, the skin diving scenes. All that's true, and I think it's a case of what did we do right rather than what did we do wrong.
Why would there be like 5 seasons of Axemen where the insurance for something like that has got to be through the roof? Every scene you've got logs coming at your face.
You're exactly right. I mean, that's you have to look at that. And
you've got power tools. You've got, what do you call those things that chop down wood?
Chainsaws?
You've got chainsaws. Yeah.
Well, like, then you have to kind of, like Bill says, you kind of have to look at it then from that perspective, and you have to say then maybe you guys were stepping on toes or something like that.
Yeah, but see, the thing is, if you're stepping on toes, every UFO story I've ever heard, you know, there's been black helicopters over your house, there have been people following you, you get weird.
Nobody was bugging you guys, like
zero. Yeah. And sadly, ever since I've been part of the magazine, zero. And I with the magazine, since you can't break a story in a monthly or you just can't, not with the internet. You break a story on the internet, period. You can't break a story with print. And so as a result, we try to be a magazine of record so that you have a record of what's going on forever. But geez, I mean, but here's the other thing. Here's the weird thing, and let me just say this. We occasionally get weird stuff that comes in the mail or weird phone calls, and we have to use our judgment as to whether or not to follow it. You know, like we got one recently, and I won't tell what Googling I did to figure out. Okay, fine, it's that group again, and they're trying to get our goat.
Yeah.
But it was real cloak and dagger, and it was pretty cool because the people went to some trouble. They put our address as return address, and it was like $18 for a little package, and it was all very mysterious. And there was a CD inside, and it was all kind of to the point where we were a little bit afraid to put the CD in the computers because it could be like a virus or something. Yeah, or it could be like Mission Impossible or something. You see smoke coming out of your drive. It's like, oh great, but. So we literally, and then we actually took a hardly ever used computer, used it to check it out. And the minute the CD came up, we knew, oh yeah, right, it's that guy. And we went on, and the guy, I love this. This is so cool. The guy or a woman, whoever it was, wanted us to, in order to say that we agreed to go to the next stage. we had to put a symbol on our website down at in a certain place on our website that only they would notice.
Oh, jeez.
What a pain in the neck, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Get over yourself. That's what I.
Right, it's like putting an X on your window, right? And then they would know.
Yeah. And so, you know, and I love that element. And then, of course, during the course of the show, again, I don't think I can name names or anything, but we were scammed by a real scammer. And the scammer said that he had, and I don't, Tim, did we talk about this back in the day? Because it was so hilarious what was going on.
I don't know.
This guy who said he had parts of the, you know, he actually worked for a government company, had parts of the Roswell stuff.
No, I don't think I've heard that story. No.
Well, just to make a really long story, and then we can go back to it if it doesn't need to get short. But sadly, I can only tell you, and the same thing with this thing that just happened, for a brief shining minute, or sadly, sometimes 24 hours, you think to yourself, this is it. You know, has that ever happened to you, Tim, where you think, now I've really found something?
Sometimes, but rarely. I'm usually sort of late to the dance, but I prefer it that way because then I don't get mixed up in a lot of Serpos and everything else.
But you always, I mean, you wouldn't be doing this work, you wouldn't be bothering if you didn't hold out the possibility that, you know, the next day somebody's going to call you and say, you know what, I've got some stuff and I'm scared and I don't want to know who to tell to and all this kind of stuff. And so but the thing is, that's where I was going. You have to use some discretion. And in fact, we've had a lot of people tell us a lot of things over the years, sometimes that things that make you do look behind you while you're talking. And they've been government people, long-time government people, time and time again. And, of course, started with Corso. And then Bill did a book years ago. He's done two scary books, many scary books in the true crime field, but one scary book was, you know, Roswell could have, you know, Corso's story is kind of, you know, out there, but he did a book originally that had me so scared because this guy came to us and said, I used to kill people. He was in the mafia. I used to kill people for Hoover. Hoover had a death squad, and my God, that was scary. And he was telling us back then, this was a long, long, long time ago. He's still alive, still an old man. He's a great, great, great guy. He was telling us about the kinds of listening things that can happen. Like, he came to our house with bodyguards, and after he left, you know, I began to do research and stuff, and I found that they can just kind of leave little things in your house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I was just freaking out. But anyway, so I was really scared about that because that was an amazing story, and it turns out to be pretty much true. And, you know, and what was the other? There was another scary one. Oh, the shooting down of Flight 800. That was pretty scary, where the government, the FBI actually, you know, a long story. We can go into that some other time, but, you know.
Well, the FBI subpoenaed me, raided the publisher. They actually raided a publisher to demand a copy of the manuscript, and the publisher said to them, well, the book's printed here. You can have a free book. and they were furious. And
No, but I disagree. The FBI was really nice because they called you first and said, coming across your fax machine, you're going to see a shield.
Oh, right, they did call. There was crack of dawn, they called.
And that was nice of them, and they said, don't freak out. You're being subpoenaed. And the reason is because everybody involved with this guy, they were trying to entrap this guy.
Jim Sanders. We could say his name, Jim Sanders.
Yeah. His wife is a stewardess, and she was given bits of a seat back cushion material to go and take to a lab, and they tried to entrap this couple, and so they wanted to follow the money. So anybody that was involved with them had to be subpoenaed, and then we had to pay the lawyer and everything just to be.
Man.
Yeah. So anyway, but see, that's what I'm saying. Nothing, zero, when it comes to UFOs here. And everybody says they are so top secret and stuff. But, so that tells me either we're so far from the truth, you know, or it's a big mystery, like I suspect, and you know, who knows?
Well, look, the point is this: we were also tracked by individuals who came from various government agencies on UFO Hunters who would give us these little missives, these little messages.
I don't know, but these are people who say that. And
well, you have no proof. I mean, that's the point. I mean, you're not going to say, could I have your National Security Agency official top secret badge, please, with your with your I codes on it? I mean, you're just not going to say that. But they would drop hints, and one of the hints was that ABC, which owns History Channel, and History Channel are going to be doing real big payback because of what they did over at Dulce and some of the other things. And it turns out that shows like the Alien Abduction Show last year, shows like what they did with the Star Child and with the Flatwoods Monster, where the network has to give so much time to these debunkers who come on and they're totally prejudiced. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. People who are I saw it when they did Day After Roswell.
We should all get into that business. You know, if we all...
We should be debunkers, because they're the ones that make the money.
We'd have a steady job.
That's right, because you're always going on Larry King and places like that.
Right, and you say the same things over and over again.
That's right.
Yeah, well, there's way more ufologists than there are debunkers, so...
Yeah, but who would be a better debunker than a... You know, but who would be a better debunker than a ufologist who says, you know what, I've seen the light, now I'm going to debunk.
Right, exactly. You show me the piece of the UFO. Well, the government has a piece of the UFO, so you're never going to show you a piece of a UFO. And people with, let's just say, enormous financial resources, best way I could put it, people with enormous financial resources are able to claim, look, we can do the science on these kinds of artifacts, pieces of skin, flesh, you know, animal paws, things like that. We can do the biological research. So therefore, give it to us. And so people will say, "Oh, look, I found this in Utah, for example," and they'll give it to this person.
So then, so there's the path maybe. And Tim, have you talked to people ever? And I'm see, now I should go and look at your archives and make sure before I ask you this. But have you done any shows on Skinwalker?
Yeah.
Okay.
I talked to Colm Kelleher and George Knapp.
Okay. Well, that's where I think it's really scary, because really big money has been thrown at that stuff. And that's where I would say, if you want to look at conspiracy, follow black budget money if you can. Yeah,
like
you know what I mean?
NIDS type of thing?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether NIDS is black budget because we all know the name and
that's true. But they're very secretive in the sense that they don't really let you know what they're doing exactly.
Yeah, and the thing we've been privy to over and over and over again are government people who have themselves, or military people who've themselves been approached to join or their friends have to join the black budget, and you really don't come out of it ever. You're going to be kind of working for them the rest of your life, and it's a vast sum of money being used for something, probably for wonderful weapons that are keeping us safe, I hope, and for satellites that can hear exactly what we're saying, I hope,
Yeah.
Well, we bumped into one of those satellites inadvertently over the skies in Las Vegas with the first time we went on the road to do a show on another guy who for 24 hours we thought, wow, this is it, we've done it.
Yeah,
Colonel X, remember Colonel X, Ben Woods?
Yeah. Right, and that you should tell Tim that's right, because that's actually closer to maybe stumbling on toes. But here's the thing: the way you describe all these bumping into things at this point in time, it really sounds like you could sell a show like Abbott and Costello, look at UFOs.
Well, that's how we were in the first episode. It was literally Abbott and Costello meet the UFO, meet the guy from space. We were Colonel X, Ben Woods, who had been working with Stephen Greer's Disclosure Project, had contacted us and said, look, I know where there is a reverse-engineered spacecraft, and it's over Las Vegas. It's in Nevada. I'm a colonel in the Air Force. I'm seeing this thing every night. It's up in the air. You could fill in the blank. That's what he said. So we began talking to him, and he sent us photographs of this thing, this kind of slivery object. It was it was a cover of one of our issues all the way back, probably 2006, I think. And we got this blowback from Stephen Greer's group. How dare you deal with him? How dare you talk to Colonel X? This is us, and Dr. Ravenstar is going out there, etc.,
that felt, there you might say conspiracy. That felt so official government-y as opposed to kind of clumpy UFO-y. In other words, they didn't act like, like a guy in his basement with his file cabinet. They acted like you really stepped on the wrong toes here.
Oh, absolutely.
So it was less like a turf war and more like they were the handlers of this guy, maybe?
Oh, yeah, that somehow they were the ones responsible for this guy. And so we said, you know what? We're a magazine, and you know where we live? In America. And in America, you get to publish things in magazines that aren't libelous, defamatory, obscene, etc., etc. And so we published it. So they were furious. So we set up a UFO Hunters episode going out to Las Vegas. And we go out there.
Actually, there you go. We did break that story because we kind of exposed them.
Yeah, we did break the story.
We did it in such a way as to not get sued, because that's the other thing. They were definitely threatening. They were threatening.
All kinds of things.
Yeah.
So we go out to Las Vegas.
We wrote the story. And
we found that same object, or we believe it's the same object, was hovering over the city of Las Vegas, and it could be seen from Jim Sanders, TWA Flight 800, his driveway. So we go out there, we film the object, we go up to the national forest north of Las Vegas, way up, about 9,000 feet, and we get this clear night, and we film the object. We've got a hugely powerful telescope fixed to our camera and a star chart, so that we were able to plot whether if this thing were a satellite. That's one thing. It was motionless, so it wasn't a space station or anything. And there were no stars because we have the star map linked to the.
Wait! I thought it was a space. I thought it was geosynchronous.
It was, yes, but it wasn't the space station, which is not geosynchronous. Because that you could see moving across the sky. This was something else, but it was not a star, not one of our own not one of our own Earth orbit satellites. It was something else. Sure enough, we get images of this thing, right? And I text Nancy. I'm in Vegas, and I text Nancy back at the office. We got it. We got the UFO. Well, at that moment, the lights flicker on that object because I hear these screams from outside, from the camera crew. What's going on? What's going on? The object flickers, and then you could see the outline of the object sink below the horizon. So we're like flabbergasted. Then we drive over to Sanders' house. We pack up. We drive back to Sanders' house. He says, yeah, the thing disappeared. As we're leaving, as our cars are leaving Jim Sanders' driveway, he calls us and says, guess what? The object is back up. So I check with Bill Scott. Bill Scott is the guy I wrote the book Space Wars with and Counter Space with, and he's a good friend, and we've worked with him for years, etc. And he says, don't you know what they were doing? You guys picked up one of our newest surveillance platforms. This is the platform that's over downtown Baghdad. You picked it up, and they could see you, they could see your license plates, they could scrub everything coming off your BlackBerry, they could do all that. And as soon as you hit send, they scrubbed it, they knew you were there, and when you left, they could see from they knew your license plates, they could see you go, and they just put their lights back on and got to a higher altitude. And we said, well, how could they do that? And he's going, well, let's just say that some people speculate that we have anti-gravity abilities. We have the ability to utilize anti-gravity, whether it's some kind of electromagnetic envelope or shifting polarity. We have that, and it just came back up. So you guys tripped into something big, and they're funning with you.
Yeah. Now let me take it down a different path a little bit here. Now, from what I can recall from our original interview, Bill, it sounds like you first got sort of into this UFO thing via your initial meeting with Colonel Corso, and he was telling you one story, and then it drifted into what eventually became the day after Roswell. Is that before that you weren't involved in UFOs, right?
No, we weren't. We all knew about the crash at Roswell from the 1970s, but we weren't really doing any UFO books, and it was really Corso that. And I didn't get hooked up with Corso. In fact, I never got hooked up with Corso. I was working for the motion picture company that had purchased his life story rights, and the purpose of that life story rights option had nothing to do with UFOs.
Right.
Everything to do with missing POWs, because Phil Corso was the person working for General Eisenhower who negotiated. He was back on Eisenhower's, he was a military liaison at the White House. Corso, who had also worked for MacArthur during the Korean War, targeting Soviet and Chinese emplacements for nuclear weapons. Corso helped negotiate Little Switch, Big Switch, and in the prisoner exchange with North Korea, President Eisenhower had to sign off on leaving American POWs in China and the Soviet Union, people who would never return. And that was the story that we were doing for a movie of the week. And I was working on a book with Jim Sanders and ultimately Chip Beck, who was a CIA station chief, and Phil Corso. And when Corso literally dropped 2 bombs at a kind of a big intake meeting, one was that he worked for Senator Richard Russell during the Warren Commission hearings, and knew all about the Warren Commission and dropped some major ordinance at that meeting. And also that he was a Foreign Technology Desk director and later the Deputy Director of Army R&D, basically helping to filter technology from the crash at Roswell for reverse engineering. When he dropped those, they stopped what they were doing and said, that's the book. And Nancy came in and said, this is your book.
Yeah, but remember this. There's a little more background. By the time we got all the Corso material, and that's literally, I can show you pictures, Tim. That's literally boxes and boxes of material. By the time we got all that material and had to go through it, this is after once he dropped that bomb at the meeting about having the Roswell stuff. This was maybe a year and a half before. This was around 1996, thereabouts. But 1997 was fast approaching, and I was very aware of that because I was born in '47. I was aware I'd be turning 50 in 1997, and so I knew that if I'm turning 50, so is the city of Roswell. And that whole story.
Yeah, so then you wanted to get the book.
Right. It didn't, and you kind of, it wasn't rocket science that if you had a story, any story about Roswell, you had a big story coming up for the 50th anniversary. It's just, we're book packagers. Bill and I, we have a company, we've had a company now for 27 years, Shadow Lawn Press, and we've been packaging books. And so, packaging just means how to put things in their best light and how to get these books out there and know when to, And so that was a no-brainer. But over the course of time, we got a ton of material from Corso. He basically dumped on us everything he ever wrote, anything he ever cut out of a magazine, or every kind of thing he collected from the government and stuff, hearings and things. And so we basically had that stuff to go through. And in the course of it, he had already tried to sell the story. This was already packaged into his own life story. He wrote this endless book called I Walk with Giants. And it was, the typical person who needs a book packager. He basically wrote a book that was like 9,000 pages long.
Yeah.
And it weighed a ton, and it was in a loose leaf kind of format. And you basically, or those spiral things.
Yeah.
You basically, it wasn't very interesting because it was, I was born in a small mining town, and it went on from there. And
he was. That's exactly where he was born, in a small mining town.
But the thing about it is, within that material, and when we still have the material, and one of these days we need to go through it, because now his son and Bill are still hoping to do more work with that material. The Corso Enterprise, whatever the thing is, it's his son now has all the rights to his stuff, and Bill. But anyway, the thing is, it was already in there, and I just think that because it was 1996, and because book packagers were involved, who, in our case, because I was born in '47, I'm a fiction writer, and I was writing a fiction about aliens. And so I was kind of, I had done some research, and I was kind of aware of this kind of thing. So when I saw that portion, I knew I would be able to guide Bill in creating a story that would have some relevance for our country, et cetera. And, when we saw what he was saying, the biggest thing any packager would say, and Simon & Schuster ended up being the ones to publish this book, the biggest thing any publisher would say is, we're going to get sued like crazy. I mean, you're saying that, IBM and Bell Lab and et cetera, didn't really come by their material except, through government and stuff, and we're going to get sued like crazy. And so everything had to be vetted very, very carefully. And as I've always said, no matter what you say about the story, we never got sued. Simon & Schuster never got sued, and Simon & Schuster's a big publisher.
Exactly, yeah, and everybody's always looking for a payout, so.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And so there's something to be said for that, I think.
Sure. Imagine the bombshell that AT&T, which invented the transistor, right, Brattain and Shockley, you would have thought that somebody would have bellied up to challenge that patent and say, hey, wait a minute, you guys didn't invent this. It came from outer space. You should just give it away. It's free. It came from the government. Not a peep.
Yeah. So now Bill obviously co-writes the book, and then I guess you're just plunged into this world of ufology, right? I mean, this crazy, zany world of people.
That's for sure. Well, the way that worked, yeah, Tim, I mean, the way that worked, Nancy and I, we went to Roswell to launch the book in 1997 with Phil Corso.
Yeah, but when did you get interviewed?
Le Point. So Nancy and I go to Roswell to launch the book.
Okay, and up until this point, like, no one's...
Well, nobody knows.
Yeah,
I mean,
the UFO field is incestuous to the point where everybody knows everybody else,
but nobody knows this, Tim, because Simon & Schuster kept the book under wraps, gradually releasing pre-publishing information. But as we all know, the UFO community is not only incestuous, it's insular. So it's
but wait, it's also insane.
It's also insane,
Exactly.
but it is in this little bubble of its own. It's like a bar fight inside of a bubble, right? So
that's the best description.
So there are no links. So there are no links to the outside. It's just whatever happens. It's like whatever happens inside ufology stays in ufology.
Yeah.
So nobody knows about this book except for what Simon & Schuster was slowly releasing. And Corso was ecstatic. This is his moment in the sun. This is the culmination of what he wants. This is his book. So we go to Roswell, and there the folks from UFO Magazine come up to us.
No, that's not the way it happened.
Yeah, they came up to us at Roswell, remember, because the story had already appeared, the review of the book had already appeared in UFO Magazine when we were at Roswell.
No, what I'm saying to you is, go back. What you said was you met the UFO Magazine folks in Roswell.
No, I'm sorry, I met them after we came back from Roswell. But they had already reviewed the book and had given a really positive review of the book.
But did they do it before? No, they didn't do it before you went to Roswell.
I think so, because one of the ecstatic things was for Simon & Schuster that the review was coming out in UFO Magazine.
No, not at all, because what happened was we didn't do, and this is sadly, I have a photograph that I can show you and we can put up, I should put up on our blog or something soon, of our paperwork, because we've just recently moved again, and our paperwork is right now in tall piles of paper. And so somewhere in there is this whole historical record in paper, and I can actually eventually, show you that I can not only just tell you this, but I can say, okay, here's the receipts or something. But what happened was when we went to Roswell in '97, the book was it was a serious book, hardcover, and it was getting a serious debut into the world. It had nothing to do with UFO Magazine. That would have been considered way too low.
Oh, no. The New York Times had reviewed the book.
That's what I'm saying. Not only that, remember, it was on the front page of the New York Times because of Strom Thurmond, but it was NBC type thing.
It was Dateline.
And that sort of thing. So basically, no, there was no UFO Magazine until, because here's why I remember. Because when you came back from that interview, all the excitement had already come and gone. We were already living in our little house. Our life had begun to quiet down. And in fact, our life was very happy because we were on the bestseller list for something like 13 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
13 or 14 weeks. And nothing was more exciting than that for book people because it's the best thing that can happen to you. And we decided, since we'd been in the book business so long, that every week we were on the list. We were going to go out to dinner to celebrate, just Bill and myself, just because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And every single solitary week that it was on the list, we did, in fact, schlep out to a restaurant and celebrate because it was such a big deal. And the thing was, by the time that you were interviewed for UFO Magazine, it had really quieted down. You might have still been on the list. But I remember you came home, and at this point we're now doing the smaller stuff, and life had gotten back to normal. And all this infighting in the UFO field, none of that had touched us because we didn't know about the UFO field.
Exactly, yeah.
And here's the other thing. The amazing story that was going on in Roswell. Now, in Roswell, I remember we met Kevin Randall, and we've since become friends, but at that point he was not too happy because he must have gotten, I think he didn't get an advanced copy. He sadly got like a bootleg
copy?
No.
Here's what happened.
No, it was an uncorrected proof.
No, here's what happened. He didn't even get that.
He got the proposal, I think.
Yes, what happened was, again, these things happen. Since it was not Corso that we were working with directly, I mean, we were writing it with him, but before the book was even sold to Simon & Schuster, we'd written a proposal. And the proposal had to go through the movie company, just how Hollywood works. Mm-hmm. So the motion picture company that licensed Corso's rights had to vet the proposal to make sure they liked it, because the whole purpose was the book was going to sell a movie. Not the book was going to sell the book. The book's purpose was to sell a motion picture. So they had to vet the proposal. In the vetting process, the motion picture company added the fact that Corso was a member of MJ-12.
Really?
Right. So in the proposal, which they put in, they said, this is what you got to send out. And out it went that he was an MJ-12.
So it wasn't in the book because it wasn't true?
It was never in the book. So it wasn't true. He was never a member of MJ-12.
Oh. And in fact, you know what, Tim? Here's the cool thing. I obviously have copies of that proposal, and I will actually find that, because you know what, this kind of stuff, people then start to, then this becomes a whole train of...
Right.
Yeah, so I actually can physically find that information. So this is before digital, by the way.
This is before digital. So the proposal goes out, right, with MJ-12 in it, to a number of
before
publishers.
The Internet.
Before the Internet, yeah. So this is 95. This is 1995. One of the publishers gives it to Kevin Randall, because Kevin had written the book on Roswell.
Which publisher?
William Morrow gave the book. I even know the editor because he wore a ponytail around New York.
Who was the editor?
Paul something. He gave the proposal to Kevin Randall. Kevin Randall sees MJ-12 and goes ballistic and says, this can't be true. This thing is a fake. When the next proposal comes out, of course, Corso read the proposal and said, I was never an MJ-12. Who put this in? So he said, the movie company.
Did you write the proposal?
I wrote the proposal, and then they added MJ-12, and it went out, and then Corso said, take it out.
Well, you wouldn't have even known what MJ-12 was if they added it.
I knew what it was because I knew the book when it came out.
Oh, because of Chandra.
Because of Jamie Chandra, who was a friend of ours. So I knew what MJ-12 was, and
that, Tim, here's the thing.
That's
Tim.
A whole other story.
Well, see, but let's just do a segue, because this segue is amazing. Is that the situation where that woman was in the room saying?
Right. That was Jamie Chandra had a girlfriend whose name shall go unmentioned.
Yeah.
And we were working with her for a movie of the week for ABC, for Showtime and ABC.
Which company?
This would have been with Viacom to do. This is when I had the office over on Highland, and we were working with her to do a motion picture with Dan to set it up at ABC. ABC was interested in this movie of the week.
Yeah.
And so we're having meetings at this office.
What year was this, would you say?
94. It was right after Chandra had gotten it was after Chandra had obviously gotten the role of film. And then he gave me his manuscript on the Aviary, right?
Wow, I don't think I have that.
No, because I gave it back to him.
Oh.
So he gives us this manuscript, and
by the way, now he's a mystery figure. What was he like, by the way? Tim,
I'm interested in that. I'd like to know more about that, because he was so mysterious.
When I met him, I met him through his girlfriend.
Okay, how old was he and stuff?
He'd been a producer. I would say he was about 5 years older than. He'd be around 66, 67 right now, I think.
So when you met him, he was 5 years older than you were?
Yeah.
Well, did he seem like a completely legit, straight-up guy?
Oh, yeah, straight up guy, very intense, very focused. He was there are typical producers who work in this industry who are extraordinarily focused, who do nothing but produce, whose life is their work, and that was Jamie Chandra.
So when you met Jamie, were you meeting him only because of his girlfriend?
She said, you've got to meet this producer, because we were talking about doing projects together. And she said, you've got to meet my producer. Maybe you guys can work together. And when we met him, he said, here's a manuscript. And he tells me the story of MJ-12 and the film that wound up in his mailbox.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me jump in here and just ask, because there's a lot of people that think that he was probably mixed up with, the whole Bill Moore, Doty, CIA, all that stuff.
Right.
Now, knowing what we know now with whatever 20 years of retrospective on it, or 10 years or whatever, what do you think?
Well, before you say what you think, and although we're not going to name the girlfriend's name, I bet you, just, reflecting on this now, I bet you a lot of that stuff might have come from the girlfriend.
Well, she was Mossad.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she worked with Yuri Geller at Mossad, and she said she worked for the CIA, and that she was.
Well, but see, here's the thing, Tim, and this is why I'll just, and then Bill can kind of fill it in. The girlfriend, who was sort of a psychic type, in the meeting, said to Bill. And this was.
Oh yeah, well, this is the big moment. This is the big reveal.
Yeah, but I mean, and then you can kind of fill in who these people were and stuff. Sure. And what movie project it was. But the thing was, she said to Bill something along the lines of, "Well, they're in the room right now, and they're standing right behind you, and they're telling me that you're going to be the one disclosing information about their existence. This is UFO. She's saying she sees aliens." They're in the room, they're standing behind Bill, and they're telling her that Bill is going to be the one to disclose UFO information.
Well,
you know what? I mean, this is wacky, but here's the thing. So back up and tell me again, at least, and tell whoever's listening, Tim, because we're testing.
And the world.
Sure, but
exactly, yes.
What was the project that
the whole world is listening?
This is exactly kind of what I hoped for when we did the interview, because this is really what I think it would be like if we were all sitting around having
exactly, and I didn't have to cook or clean up. It's true, but what was the project you were physically? I mean, why were you in that room together?
Well, first of all,
was it? Can you say Dan Paulson?
I can say Dan Paulson.
Was it Dan Paulson that was the...
Well, Dan Paulson wasn't in the room, but Dan Paulson was the person we were bringing projects to.
Okay, Dan Paulson was one of the he's one of the many, many Hollywood guys that we were in partners with at various points in time, doing movies, making movies, getting movies made. So that was, and he's a legitimate, straight up. But so what project were you guys...
But the contact with this woman came not from Dan Paulson, but from Don Allen.
Oh, that's irrelevant.
No, it's not, because Don Allen had a company.
But it's not relevant.
It's not relevant, but it was Don Allen who put us together. We met in the office.
Okay, but so
and
why?
She met,
but actually, maybe it is relevant. Who knows? But here's the thing: what project were you guys all talking about doing?
This is the project. Remember the woman whose daughter was taken by this bicycle gang, and so she goes out and she's got this flaming red hair. She was over at the house.
She was named Vicky something.
Vicky, and she goes out and she becomes a biker mom.
It was that was Tim. That was a terrible. Again, see, this is the kind of stuff we normally would be dealing with. And the guy, her boyfriend, comes to our house.
He was a sheriff.
Yeah, he was a sheriff someplace in California. But these people come to your house, and this guy came to our house, and he had like an automatic rifle.
He had an AK-47 loaded, and said, "Let me show you my AK-47." And he's sitting in our house, right, with this AK-47.
This is not fun.
Armed to the teeth, and he's a really sweet guy. He introduces me to the number 2 guy in the Mexican mafia to do a book. The guy who was in the movie with.
And see, this as a wife, this is the kind of stuff I try to put the cape. Bill thinks this is exciting because Bill's just an ordinary writer who doesn't get out much. And as a wife, you put the kibosh on this stuff. You say, you know what? There's many a book out there. Write about don't write about criminals, etc. And so this particular storyline that we're talking about all went to nowhere, and it kind of went to nowhere. It went nowhere because this was also during that awful era. And it's happening again right now in the UFO world, this awful era of satanic ritual abuse.
Well, that's what she said was going on with the daughter, yeah.
Yeah, so that was sort of like back in the day when kids, and of course it all comes about because parents suddenly had to go to, mothers and fathers had to go to work to support people, support their families, and mothers had to join the workforce in force. And so as a result, our culture, it was basically, I think the mothers of the entire country as a group were just, their hearts were breaking. Well, this whole, they've got our children in satanic rituals became a kind of a meme, that
the whole thing with
over.
Daycare centers and
Exactly.
That's right. The McMartin case was the one that really brought the whole thing to fruition.
This is the sad thing. This is exactly the same thing. And again, in that pile of paper, this woman, this redheaded woman, had kept in her own way diaries and stuff like that and all this kind of stuff, and she left it all with us. And you kind of come to see, upon looking at this stuff, if you're not going to let these people scare you, and if you don't buy into their insanity, because there really comes insanity. I mean, if you start reading this weird I don't know whether you've ever started reading like a really interesting book, Peter Levenda.
Yeah, I've read some of his stuff, yeah.
Yeah, when you start to read that in the middle of the night, you can kind of begin to look around saying, my God, it's all a plot. Well, if you don't buy into that, if you try to stay objective and stay outside of it, and of course, looking back at this woman's paperwork, 25 years later, you say, yeah, there really wasn't anything there. She was sad to be saying goodbye to her child, I think, every morning.
Well, no. There was something there, but I think she made more of it, and the case she had against those people was thrown out of court, and she was angry, and the network couldn't get the validation it needed to corroborate her story.
Yeah,
and then the other girl went crazy when it came time to make the deal with ABC, and her own lawyer told us, get out of this deal because you'll never make money. But here's the big point, though.
Yeah.
It was she never came to me for that original story.
When you say the other girl, you're talking about the girl who saw the aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about Shando's girlfriend now.
Yeah, she came because she said that she had been kidnapped by intelligence agencies because she worked for Mossad and the CIA, and she was working with Uri Geller, and that was the story she wanted to tell about how she'd been kidnapped.
So she wanted to do her own story.
She was doing her own story. And then she introduced me to Jamie Chandray, and Chandray told me all about UFOs and the MJ-12 and everything. So we're sitting in the office, and Jamie Chandray says, you know, Bill, I just figured this out. I said, what? He says, you're going to be the one. Jamie says this. You're going to be the one to disclose the truth about UFOs. And so I said, wow. It was like the scene from that movie, To Be or Not to Be. So I'm going to be the discloser, eh? I mean, it's one of those scenes, right? And I'm like, wow, that's great. I'm going to be the discloser. I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, and Tim, like, write this down because you did say you wanted to talk about Bill's background. Ask Bill why he mentioned that movie, etc. And therein is a story. So go on.
So he said. So I said, I'm going to be the discloser, eh? And then the girl says, oh yeah, that's what the aliens say. In fact, they're saying it right now in this room. And I go, where? And of course, the aliens were invisible, and they're in the room. And flash forward 4 years. We were at Roswell. Okay, anyway, to make a long story short, the deal for the movie of the week falls through.
Wait, which movie?
The deal for the Vicky movie falls through. You know, the Biker Mom movie falls through.
But also the deal for the lady's story never came about, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Her story never came about. The deal for the Biker Mom falls through. The deal blows, basically. And the lawyers get really mad. ABC walks away. And Jamie Chandray is furious with me. So I'm seeing him at Temple Services, right? And I walk up, and I know he's mad, and I say, Jamie, have a happy holiday. Actually, it wasn't a happy holiday.
This was down in Hollywood.
This was in Hollywood. This was at the Performing Arts. So I see him. I shake his hand. The holiday is over. I get this missive. You are now directed to return to me all my manuscripts and all my work product. Well, it's only the manuscript, so I sent it back to him, and I've never heard from Jamie Chandray since, except we were at Roswell.
Do you, when you say you got a missive, was it a piece of paper?
It was a piece of paper. It was a formal letter.
You know what? That paper exists someplace in that pile.
Oh, sure it does, yeah.
And you know what? It would be fun to track that address and see if he's still there.
I would happily do it. So we bump into Jamie Chandray. This is Corso goes to Roswell. This is part of the problem with the book, by the way. Corso goes to Roswell. The book is out, and he is like the rock star of ufology.
Yeah.
And you can imagine, people have worked in ufology their entire lives. Along comes this old guy.
And you.
And me.
Yeah.
Okay, they are furious. The knives come out. This is like going to be awful. So Corso's like the rock star, and I bump into Jamie and his girlfriend.
They were in Roswell?
They were in Roswell.
Well, where did you bump into them? What
right in the milling around the Hangar 84, right in that whole milling area. So I bumped into them.
That's when Whitley was there too.
Yeah, Whitley was there in the room, right? And Paula Harris was there, and everybody.
But do you think?
Wait, so I bump into them, right? And so I look at them, and I go, hey, Jamie. Hey, unnamed girlfriend. Hey, how are you? You said I was going to be the discloser, and look, here we are. I have never seen an angrier face than Jamie Chandray when I said that.
Really?
Now, why do you think he was angry? Just because?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was furious. He was furious because of the whole deal that blew. That, in other words, I thought you were coming in, you were innocent, you were naive, and look what happened. My girlfriend's movie of the week blew, and it was all your fault. And it wasn't my fault. It was the lawyer's fault.
Yeah, but would you extrapolate that maybe he was hoping to be the guy making
that's what I was wondering. Yeah, I was wondering maybe if he thought he would be the discloser.
I mean,
Well,
what do you think? Do you think that?
No, I think that he already was a discloser. He'd already done all the disclosing he needed to do.
Yeah, but it didn't make the same splash.
It did not.
And that's only because it wasn't 50 years. No offense.
No, I'll tell you why it didn't make a splash. It came inside the UFO community. So Stanton wrote the book, MJ-12, Magic 12. That was great. Stanton actually disclosed the story.
Does Stanton work with Jamie?
No, that story had gone around and around like a whole pinball machine.
Yeah, but go back. Besides, when that story happened, I only have, and I think just about everybody in their library, you only have that one book. I mean, Jamie never made a book.
No, he never made a book. This manuscript never came out, and it was really on the aviary. It never was about MJ-12. It was on the aviary.
Yeah, but we all have that book called MJ-12. It looks like a Xerox thing.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Everybody does. The MJ-12 documents.
So the aviary thing was a whole different book.
That was a whole different book.
But
and of course,
he should have had a packager.
He should have. That's what he thought that I would be. But then when the deal collapsed with his girlfriend, he was so mad that he yanked the manuscript and it never really came out. Now it's basically everybody knows, right? Bruce Maccabee is Seagull. I mean, we all know that.
Yeah. Now, so to sort of jump back a little bit, though, here now in retrospect, Jamie Chandra, what do you think? Was he mixed up with getting information? Obviously, he got information because they sent him the.
I mean, do you think he's on the level?
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah, or do you think he was mixed up with the whole CIA disinformation, all that stuff?
Or do you think he was making it all up out of whole cloth?
He wasn't making it up because there are too many people who've stepped up to acknowledge it was true. But according to what folks have told me from the inside, they filter information out, and it's disinformation, it's information with a little twist in it, so that they know where it's going. They filter it out because they love to permeate various communities with information. And in fact, people who look like upright, straight up, good all-American news correspondents, and I could name names, but I'm not, are basically on the payroll of the CIA, pumping out stuff that they get. It's special access journalism.
Well, they've always been. Like, there was a guy like Edward somebody, like a really big guy. Remember that guy, the columnist? The very famous columnist was on the payroll. He was a New York guy. He would always sit in clubs.
Oh, Walter Winchell?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. He was working with J. Edgar Hoover. I mean,
so you think it's more just like they floated this stuff to him and then he went with it?
Absolutely. They do that all the time.
But look, has anybody looked up, I'm going to do it right now, Jamie Chandra on IMDb. What else has he done, I wonder?
I'll go look. I mean, look at Chris. I forget Chris's last name, who was the CBS producer who said he was going to do the big exposure on UFOs, and then said, oh, no, really, I can't, the big conference, then said, I can't do it because some guys in a van came, beat the crap out of me, and said, don't do it, so I'm not doing it. And he went, I mean, I remember him very well because I was friends with him as well.
Don't know who that is.
Well, here's a question that sort of ties into all this now. All right, so all this exploded pretty much. After everything died down, this is sort of a philosophical question, I guess you could say, and this is based on my 5 years of being in the UFO field. Why the hell would you stick around in this thing? You know, you guys got lives. You got other things going on. Why? Believe me, if I could get out of the UFO field, chances are I probably would.
For me, I wanted to work on a magazine so badly. I can't tell you because I had my career started as on a daily newspaper, so I have newspaper background and I loved it. And then I got married and had kids, and couldn't work on a daily paper. It's way too demanding, and et cetera.
Yeah.
And then I got involved with books in every way you could get involved with books. Love books as well. Started a company, on and on and on. Very successful, actually, in books.
Yeah.
And for me, strange as this sounds, there are only really 3 forms of communication back in the day. Print, newspaper, which was daily, books, which were very much every couple of years you come out with a book, or magazines. Magazines, to my mind, I was a magazine junkie. They were the absolute most demanding of forms because if you look at a newspaper, pick up a newspaper, there's tons of typos in a newspaper.
Yeah, yeah.
If you pick up a book, less typos. But if you ever looked at the 3 forms, you'd say, I'm telling you right now, there are far fewer typos in a magazine than in a book or a newspaper, and I was always fascinated by that, how fabulously magazines are put together, and then layout-wise, they're put together. They're so much more fun than a physical book page. A newspaper page is a template. Everything just kind of falls in,
Exactly,
And so for me, I always wanted to see, could I do it? And nothing more than could I do it, because it was sort of just a personal interest of mine. Could I pull it off? Could I actually do a magazine? And when Bill got interviewed by the Eckers, they begged him to please find us a buyer. We want to get rid of this thing. We're burned out. We're tired of it. And they were in the process of losing their house because of it. And when Bill came back from the interview and told me that, I rolled up a newspaper and hit him with it and said, we've got to do this. We can all work together. We've got to take over we've got to do this. We can solve their debt somehow. We'll make more money with this magazine. They will become whole, and I will get the chance to work on a magazine. And he said, no way. We don't have that kind of money. And so he brought the magazine to the movie company that was handling the Corso stuff, and the movie company bought it, and the Eckers were in glory. They had leased cars, they had offices, they had staff. They were happy campers for the next 5 years. And so and sadly, they named Bill publisher. The company named Bill publisher with no money exchanged. Bill never got a dime, not even a finder's fee. And they named Bill publisher. Just, I don't know, because I don't even know why they did that. But the thing was, that kind of kept us kind of connected. So Bill was invited to the meetings. And so in the very beginning, when the movie company first got the magazine, I tried to worm my way in to get hired by the movie company to be part of the magazine.
Yeah.
And so I did some covers to show them how I would do a cover, and I would try. I'd get Bill, take it in, and present it at the meetings, and they would have nothing, because the guy didn't believe, the owner didn't want nepotism. He didn't want us all ganging up. He didn't like the fact the Eckers were married to start with. He didn't want another married couple involved. And then a little further down the line, the movie company guy called me in and interviewed me and said, I'm going to, he was beginning to relent that he would call me in and maybe I could come and work. And because we were all friendly at parties and stuff, and I was always begging. And so what happened was, I went into the meeting and I thought, this was going to be great. I'm going to wow them. I'm going to tell them what I love about Mag. So I sat down across from this guy who's like Harry Potter, or
not Harry Potter, Mr. Potter.
Mr. Potter in It's a Good Life, or It's a Wonderful Life. Well, and so what happened was, and so he's a guy with a cigar, and he's rich, and he's sitting behind a big desk.
He doesn't smoke.
Well, whatever, but it's cosmically.
He's a cosmic.
Well, I mean, I have,
Yeah, but we're setting the stage here.
Have you ever heard of False Light?
Oh, well, so no cigar, but he's big desk.
Okay.
And he actually had a wine cellar there. He was a very rich guy. He is a very rich guy. In fact, now he owns a Napa thing. He owns a farm in Napa. But here's the thing. So I sat down across from him, and even though we had been friends at parties and stuff, I still sat down in the room across from him, a formal interview.
Yeah.
And he said, so tell me about, why I should hire you. And I started out by saying, well, I just love magazines. And it went downhill from there. It was so bad. And he wanted to hire me to be the advertising person. He wanted me to get ads for the magazine, which is a really bad news job.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no glory. You're not a reporter. You're not anything. You're just, trying to get ads. And so, and I started to cry because I was so frustrated. I was so anxious to do it. And I was so insulted that, so he absolutely lost all respect for me, because now I'm crying because I'm so embarrassed that I was so psyched because I'd brought, I was going to tell him what I would do with the magazine and all this kind of stuff. What I could bring to the magazine. Yeah, and he kind of
pulled the rug out from under you there.
Yeah, and it was, and also I was mortified because I'm Bill's wife, and I'm now making Bill look even worse. And so then we kind of would not speak of this anymore. And so for the next, this was like maybe 2 or 3 more years passed.
No, it was like six years passed.
And I just put it out of my mind. I literally did not follow the fortunes of the magazine, no matter what happened. And as the magazine began to become very, very shaky, I did not try to jump in anymore. I just literally just no way. And I got very involved with eBay, actually, which was kind of cool. And I actually would have to give up a good eBay job. So I forget where that was going, because I didn't, so.
Well, the whole point was that the magazine then came back into your life 6 years later.
But Tim, you had asked a question. What was the question?
Well, I guess kind of what you're saying in a sense.
Why are you in it?
Yeah, why get mixed up in this UFO crap?
See, what happened was this whole thing originally started.
But then, see, why we're in it now was when Peter, the wealthy man, decided he'd had it. He said he lost $1 million trying to make a go of this. He then gave it. He offered Bill and Vicky and Don the magazine for $1. Mm-hmm. And so they took it, and ironically, not connected to this, because we knew it was shaky, but we didn't know the inside story. We had invited Vicky and Don to our boat. We were living on a boat at the time, for dinner, and the night before, this whole thing went down. And I was at that point, as book packagers, the only book I was working on at that point was a UFO Magazine encyclopedia. And so I was really at a point in my life where, it's just a long story, there was a really big opening to do this. And so I convinced the Eckers, like, let's do this. Let's put on a show. We can do this.
Yeah.
He's selling it for $1. And that's how we got involved. And then it becomes like we dumped $15,000 in over the course of the first several months, because we had sold our house. And at that point, you're in. No offense.
Yeah. Well, once you're mixed up in UFOs, it's kind of hard to get out anyway.
But then in reality, what had happened was, the specifics of that meeting with this person who had purchased UFO Magazine back in 1998 was that he didn't want to sell the magazine. He wanted to close it down. He said, I'm closing down them. See, we'd had offers to sell the magazine from the guy who was running that Cinescape magazine, and he wouldn't sell it. He said that I'd lost too much money, and selling it wouldn't do anything. And so finally, he said, look, I'm just going to close the magazine down. There was never a point. There was never an issue of selling the magazine back in 2000. It was, I'm closing it down. Well, if he'd closed it down, I mean, Don and Vicky were again in financial straits, and if he'd closed it down, that would have been it. There would have been no income. I would have spent 6 years as the publisher emeritus of that magazine for nothing. And there were a whole bunch of lawsuits roiling up at the same time that were starting around 2000, 2001 with the partners of the magazine. It was really a mess. And so I said, I'm just going to close it down. And so what I said at the meeting was, who's going to take on all the debt from these subscribers? Because when you get a subscription to a magazine, what you are getting is a liability. You owe the subscriber X number of issues.
Exactly,
it's a loan. And every time you publish an issue, you reduce the loan by the value of that particular magazine that subscriber gets.
Right, and you shut it down, and you got to, like, prorate.
Exactly. So I said, look at all this debt. What he says, well, the magazine goes bankrupt. That's it. So I said, well, why don't you because I knew that there would be no more income. And I was really thinking, about everybody, about Nancy doing a magazine, about Don and Vicky not having any income. And I said, well, what do you want for it? I said, I want the magazine. He said, and he said, what did you give me for it? I said, what do I give you for it? For God's sakes, the magazine is $1 million in debt. What do you mean, what am I going to give you for it? He says, okay. And he was really getting mad at this conversation because he called me in to be friendly and say, you're out of a job that I wasn't getting paid for. But anyway, so he says, okay, fine. I'll give it to anybody who gives me $1. I took out $1 and I put it on his desk. That's how I got the magazine. So then we had the meeting with Don and Vicky to convince them, look, you guys can still you guys can still be a part of this,
Yeah.
Join us, be with us.
But Peter definitely said, I'm selling it to the 5 of you, and it was Don, Vicky.
That was that's because I went back to Peter. Yeah. That's why that all happened. I went back to Peter and I said, okay, look, in order to be fair, there are 5 people who should be involved in this magazine.
And the 5th person, by the way, was a person who worked for the magazine who would have been out of a job too.
Right. Yeah. So I went back and I said there should be 5 people. And he said to me, form your partnership. All of you come in with my lawyer, and we'll work out a deal. And that's how the new version of the magazine came to be. And so that's what happened. And then it kind of devolved from there if you follow the story of what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
This has got you written all over it. The Mets stayed in a Pittsburgh hotel that also hosted a convention of people dressed up as furry creatures.
Oh, no.
Is this Wilbot's worst nightmare?
No, it's worse than my worst nightmare. My worst nightmare is mascots.
Look at that.
But you know what? Mascots get paid. These people paid to stay in a hotel and look like animals? What are they thinking, Bobby?
All right, let me tell you something. This is what here's the real story here.
You're listening to Banal of America Audio.
In 40 years worth of being on the road, traveling around this great land of ours, checking into countless hotels of all stripes, here's what I've learned. There's a frightening amount of subcultures out there, Mike, and they all have conventions.
Yeah, but you've never seen these people.
All to understand one thing.
I've never seen them.
Stay away from me.
Thank you very much.
Let me talk a little bit about something that's been kind of annoying me in the last 6 months or so, and being that you guys are in the thick of it in the UFO field, you can probably identify with this, and that's just sort of like, we all know about like the true believers, okay, who they already know what's going on. They have no use for investigating. But I've become a little more annoyed in the past few years now with what I've been calling, in the past few months, with what I've been calling like the true seekers, if you will, the people that seem to think that, searching for the UFO answer is part of this greater good, and so if you're making any money off of this, that you're part of the problem, quote unquote, or if you're not adamant about the search for the answer, if you're not fully invested in this, then you're not worthy enough in their eyes. Do you kind of get what I'm saying? There's a certain sort of attitude that's
we've been the targets of this.
Well, the thing is, we will get it from two different sides. On one hand, we're kind of blameless when it comes to the magazine because, if you were running a conference or running a radio show or running a magazine, mostly even the true believers believe you gotta pay for electricity.
Exactly.
By the ink, et cetera. So they'll let you do that. And of course, we're none of us are rolling in dough here. Because for me, the love of making the magazine that's the payoff.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm questioning in my own way. Personally, I have some high credentials, and I'm really cooties are coming upon me every single day by staying in this field. And so for me, it's there is that. But for Bill, there's a third thing, because Bill's the guy that everybody's pointing to, saying, he's the guy making money from the field because he wanders in and there's a best-selling book. And now then there's a TV show. And, of course, people think Bill's making a fortune, and they don't know, none of them know the reality of showbiz. The people making a fortune, you don't know their names.
Exactly, yeah.
The guy in front of the, getting makeup put on for the camera isn't the guy making the money. And the same thing with the Corso thing. We ended up not being the ones making the money. The movie company made all the money, which is why Corso sued everybody. He was in such a fury. It's like, what happened? Where's the money? And, it took forever to untangle all that and to try to get some money. And, in fact, we ended up having to sue the company, trying to get the money. Sadly, we didn't want to pay a lawyer. We couldn't afford a lawyer. We started out with a lawyer, and then eventually Bill represented himself before he became a lawyer, and that didn't go well.
Let me get back to this thing about the target. I mean, the story that remember when David Garrison's newsletter came out, and he was, just as an example, he was using UFO Magazine, our logo.
Who's David Garrison?
The guy who does the UFO newsletter.
Oh, this was like a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, he inadvertently used UFO Magazine as kind of a trademark.
Oh, right.
And so I wrote David, and I said, look, you're going to get he's a sweet guy, former actor.
He's a nice guy.
He's a nice guy.
Yeah, but this took a long time.
So I wrote him, and I said, look, you're going to get a letter from the owner of the trademark for UFO Magazine. And I tried to explain in the letter, okay, that when you have a trademark, and UFO Magazine is trademarked, when you have a trademark, the burden is on you to defend that trademark.
Absolutely, yeah, because if you don't once, then all of a sudden anybody can use it. It's
exactly.
Because it looks like you don't care, and you don't care.
It's kind of a version of adverse possession in real estate. So you must defend your trademark, okay? Under equity you must, and under law you must. So I pointed out he was going to get a letter. So that really got him mad. So he publishes the letter. So this one person writes me, right? This real obnoxious person writes me and says, "Are you in this for the money? If you are, I will smite you." Who are you, Ezekiel? I mean, the Archangel Michael? What are you smiting here? But he got his letter. We became friends, and I said, you have to understand that for the money that trademark people, and I've gotten trademarks, and it's money, that invest in their trademarks to know that that when you don't defend it and somebody else occupies your territory, you've lost it, then that person can kick you off your trademark. So they have to defend it. And he said, oh, it was a mistake, I understand, and we became friends. But that's an example of, you mean you're being a business guy in UFOs? My God, it's a paradigm-changing event. The world will change, and you're making a buck. I will kill you for that. And that's the kind of stuff I get every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm talking about. The people who think that.
Tim, how much are you at this point in after 5 years? Because they say that every 7 years, every cell in your body changes. So every 7 years, you tend to make changes in your life. So you're in 5 years now. That's the same thing. I think I'm working towards 6 years. But how much are you in this now? Because it's kind of fascinating.
What do you mean? How much am I in it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. When you say, why are you in it, and why,
Oh, okay. Well, I guess my attitude is just sort of like, I enjoy doing the show, and I am intrigued by the UFO mystery, but I'm not going to give my life to this thing, and I'm not going to be a martyr for these people who are, like I call them, the true seekers, who it's okay for them to have a wife and kids and a normal job.
That's right.
Because they sit on the internet and listen to the show or post on message boards and blogs.
This is their hobby.
Right. They expect me, in turn, to be a martyr for them and to give up my life for the greater good, which is the paradigm-shifting cause, like Bill just said.
But also, listen to this. This is, I think, you ought to put this in your I don't know, think about it at least. Nick Redfern wrote an article a while ago, and it was populated. It's on the internet, and it's also in the magazine. It was one of his columns, and it's brilliant. And he says, sadly, if it ever turns out that there really are UFOs and everybody knows it, and we all find out about it, the last people that they're ever going to deal with are us.
Exactly.
It's Michio Kaku is the first guy getting the phone call.
Right, and I kind of try to have the attitude, like Bill said, it's a bar fight in a bubble. I try to stay out of the bubble altogether.
I know you do.
I don't want to get mixed up with all this infighting and all these people who are mad at each other. I try to stay above the fray because
but here's the thing, when you said the other day that that you do not engage, and I've been trying to keep that. I've been trying to take that to heart, and I have to balance that with. Coming from a Catholic school background, when people are saying lies, I get really mad at the lies. When the lies get a life of their own, when the person being lied about doesn't answer, then the lies stand there. And how do you handle that? I mean, if people said to you right now that you're doing something illegal or rotten to keep your they're going to say that you're doing payola or something that's illegal to make yourself popular, because now you just got the Zorgi Award, the Oscars of and so
that and $1.50 you'll get me a cup of coffee. That's
right, but still
not at Starbucks.
Yeah, but the people who didn't get the award could easily look at Paratopia. They could just come after you and say, "Look, I guess what I'm saying is, if and that's a joke. That's all a joke example. In our case, it's not a joke because we're being accused of doing a lot of stuff that I really feel I need to speak up about. Because, yeah. So for me, it's more like, and because I'm female, I feel like. I really don't know what to do. I love the concept of I don't engage, because quite frankly, when you don't engage, the bullies go away. They take their ball and they go, or they take their bat and they go beat somebody else up. That's one. On the other hand, I think to myself, no offense, I've got to stand up. I've got to, I've got to. So I'm really torn. I'm literally very torn by it, particularly nowadays. Once UFO Hunter, we came to the field as enemies to start with, so I was aware of that. And since it was a book, and since we've done many books since, you're able to leave it a little bit, and you're able to say, what a group of losers. And you can walk away and say, I'd rather worry about, I've done, I had to fight the world in the world of novels, literary novels. That's not an easy world either, and so I could put my efforts there. But in the case of the magazine, it's very different because I'm in it,
on a constant basis.
Yeah, and also I want to make friends, and I want legitimate people to want to publish in the magazine, and I don't want legitimate people to buy the lies that are being said about us.
You guys are in a different scenario, I guess you could say, than I am. At least the.
But I hate. See, part of the problem is the losers who were saying this bad stuff in many cases because of the TV show are real losers. and I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to cause any trouble here, but they are real losers. And I feel sorry for them on one level, and I know that if I were to say the truth about what really went on behind the scenes, it could be very destructive to their egos, because they're lying and saying they're bigger and better than they are. And when you really, like, pull away the curtain and say, look at, I mean, these are losers. They're doing terrible things, and they're lying to puff themselves up. I don't want to destroy people. I'd rather, I don't want to hurt them. I don't want to really hurt them. But yet they're kicking us constantly because they think, oh, Bill's on television, he can take it, And on one hand, on the other hand, when you're a public figure, if you're stupid enough to go on a TV show, then you're going to have to sit there and take all the crap about, why are you wearing the sunglasses and you're so old, and you got to do that. You got to take all that. But it's just when somebody accuses you of a crime or, literally crimes and stuff that you really kind of have to.
Well, to a point. One of the people who's still on the internet, 13 years ago, accused me of murdering Phil Corso for his money.
Person, you know what? That person, I did, when that all happened, this was back in 97, you can imagine the state of the internet. Well, no, there wasn't any internet then, was there?
It was in its
94.
stages.
It was 94. Okay, so, by 97 there was an internet enough that there was AOL stuff, right?
Well, it was CompuServe,
Prodigy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so there was, and in fact, you could still go there. There was this really cool site, and it wasn't called UFO Mind, but it might have been UFO Mind. It was like a plain blue background.
Yeah, Blue Resident,
Well, that was the name of the guy, Blue Resident Human. Now, here's the cool thing. Out of curiosity, I every once in a while Google his name because he was so angry and so mean. And it was I hate these people hiding behind fake names because it could be the guy, it could be your best friend, or it could be the guy next door to you or something. It's so frustrating because these people enjoy joking on you, like, you get your coffee from me every morning, but you don't know.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so this guy, his name was Blue Resident Human, and he was the most vicious of all the people hating on Bill because of Corso. And it was really, really vicious. He wished him very, very ill. And it turns out, you know where I found him eventually?
Where?
There's a site called Arrowid, EROWID, I think it's spelled. And it's all about, Arrowid is the drug site. And it's for every kind of drug on the planet. So if you want to research drugs of any kind, not just pharmaceuticals, but weird ayahuasca stuff and weird stuff. Well, this guy became a guy, obviously a guy living in his car and stuff, but he became a guy practicing, have you ever heard the concept of taking a heroic dose like Terence McKenna would do of ayahuasca?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you're going to take mushrooms or something, there are people who believe you could take a ton of it and really open up your mind and expand your horizons, and it's heroic if you know what you're doing, supposedly.
Okay, all right.
In Terence McKenna's case, very heroic. This guy...
Because he died, basically.
Well, he didn't die. He didn't mean to die. But here's the thing. And, in fact, he said you would only die of awe. You would never die from the drug. He felt it was safe. But anyway, this guy, Blue Resident Human, decided to take heroic doses of crack cocaine.
Jesus.
Yeah. And he is a very, very damaged person, according to the era. And he's kind of a legend. He's kind of like, I don't think he's online much, but he would occasionally talk about, like going on 5 or 6 day benders somewhere in, not Laurel Canyon, but around that vicinity, going on these benders where he'd be, and he would talk about the benders like, he was seeing God, basically, and stuff. You can imagine. So that's what happened to that guy, at least, according to, or his avatar.
Well, what happened was... But wait.
Yeah. I know we're running out of time. I do want to. This is too interesting to pass up. I got to tell you what I found on Jamie Chandra.
Okay.
This is too cool. There's only one thing he ever did, according to IMDb.
Mm-hmm.
Only one thing, and he was miscellaneous crew. And miscellaneous crew means when you go all the way down, it's video. Okay. He held a video, other crew video. God knows what camera. Here's the thing. It's a movie from 1975 called The Devil's Rain. Okay?
Yeah.
And the people in it, this is hilarious. This is 75. Some of the people in it, beside Ernest Borgnine, you'd expect.
Yeah.
But William Shatner, Ida Lupino, John Travolta, Anton LaVey,
Anton LaVey, wow.
Yeah. And Diane LaVey. Yeah. Uh-huh. So that's pretty interesting. So you were dealing with somebody, let's just say, he's only a camera guy. And Keenan,
but nevertheless, I mean, Anton LaVey is a really important name in that particular field of you know what.
But it's so interesting that Shatner and Travolta are in this. It's called The Devil's Reign. I'm sure it's a cult film. I'm sure
it probably is.
75.
It probably is. And 75 was right before the whole McMartin business began to explode.
Oh, and and then I think there was a tagline for what the story's about. Wait a second here. The tagline was interesting, and I'll find that in a second.
Well, it's not Satan beam me up.
It is. No, it is. It literally is. The Devil's Reign. It's something about Satan. It is definitely Satan. Anyway, it's here someplace.
Yeah, so I guess the point I was just trying to make, too, aside from the people that think that you shouldn't be making money, is just that whole kind of philosophical idea that you don't believe enough, in a sense. It's hard to
that's it.
wrong.
Yeah, but in order to be a good researcher, you're going to have to spend a little money on it.
Yeah, but the whole point is this.
Here's the plot.
Yeah.
A bunch of Satanists in the American rural landscape have terrible powers which cause them to melt their victims.
Great, so it's Scanners 6.
Yeah.
But this business about the true believers and the committed, this is what bothers me, because it's like the Taliban. And it's not the Taliban because it's a Muslim group. It is that there are fringe people on the fringe of a lot of things. The radical religious right that believe that any minute we're going to have rapture, and so no matter what you do to anybody else is irrelevant because you can be part of the rapture.
Yeah.
And they can be as vicious can be. The Taliban, Al-Qaeda, people who literally would kill their own because they feel that because they carry the Holy Spirit, they must be completely pure. So they would kill other people to purify themselves from this. And you see this in the Bible all the time. Well, it exists in the field of UFOs, that people have to be so pure that they go on these basic attacks. It's like these Taliban attacks. They're witch hunters. And they have to cleanse the field. Ethnic cleansing is what it is.
Look what's going on right now. It's happening with Dolan, and we're putting Dolan on the cover of this issue, the one I'm working on right now. It's because Dolan has been in conferences with people that are considered money grubbers. I mean,
exactly,
and bad.
Yeah, that's kind of the scenario I'm painting here. Yeah.
Guilt by association.
Guilt by association, and because you're at a conference with somebody, suddenly you're not pure, and if you're not pure, we have to get you out of the field, regardless of what you've done in the way of research.
Right, and not only that, it reminds me more of the McCarthy era.
Well, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Who do you know, and have you ever, like, for example, I mean, Dolan does not want to say nasty things about people that he hardly knows in some cases, and so he gets in trouble because he won't denounce them.
Exactly, that's what happens to me all the time too, where it's
Oh yeah, and you're always accused, Tim, always the same thing people accuse me of, and I believe we're in the same one. We have the same philosophy. We're both accused of not calling people out, and like you'll let people have their say. Which I think is very important. People should go on the record, and they should not be called out. They should have their say. And I think making the record like you're doing, because that's what you're known for. You can go back through your archives and basically, in some cases, hear the only because one of the things I was raving about is like Ann Droffel. I think you did like a 3-part with her.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you can't get that anyplace. And it's very important to have this stuff, to stop this woman in the middle of what she's talking about and say, well, let me tell you about me, and let me tell you why I think you're wrong. I mean, it's a waste of everybody's time. You want to hear she's going on the record. You want to hear what she has to say. And then when she goes away and you still have the microphone, for you to stand there and say what you think of her is very awful, I think. And very cowardly to talk about somebody after they're off.
And unprofessional.
Well, beyond.
Totally.
But to give the devil his due, it is really gripping entertainment. And it's just like Well, it's like, the TV shows that you hate to admit you watch, because, you're watching people pull each other's weaves off. Because,
yeah.
I mean, it's good entertainment, and those are the people actually that fingers should be pointed at, because they're bringing down the discourse, and, they're bringing actual more entertainment where it shouldn't be. I mean, I believe what I'm doing is dull, dreary research, and I think that's got to be done too.
But in some cases, and you're right, in some cases, the dull and dreary research shines a light into a corner that would remain dark.
Of course.
And so in the case of Ann Druffel, the work that she did with the McDonald files and the penetration that she did into the story of McDonald and his wife and this whole business of how he was pursued by the FBI.
Right, and you guys had him on the show. And then
we did. We had her on the show. She was fantastic.
Well, here's the other thing, Tim. Did you talk to Ann? And again, I'm sorry, because I did listen to. I know I listened to the early ones. I don't think I listened to them all the way. I didn't listen to the last one. Did you? And because time is really of the essence.
I know. Yeah.
And I meant to. But did you talk to her about her latest book, the last book she did?
The How to Stop an Alien Abduction one, or the reissue of Tahunga Canyon?
No, none of those. The one that she channeled.
Oh, okay. No, we didn't get into that.
Yeah, see, and that's where I feel really guilty. I really like Ann. I think she's a wonderful woman, and she really her PR company, I think it's a PR company for the book publisher, really pushed and pushed and pushed to please do this story, and it had a part of it that just kind of freaked me out as a publisher, and she was basically saying it was very Christian fundamentalist, talking about Islam versus Christianity.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go there, and that's where you're kind of looking out for the best interest for your business. With everybody is so whipped up right now, and it just struck me as something that we couldn't handle the storm of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and I feel really guilty about that. But then people are paying us. People are buying our magazine for the discretion that we are in fact choosing. And so, if Dolan's on the cover, it's because, first of all, the article is being written by Al, who absolutely is a fan. And I was going to do there's a guy right now who's got stuff on the internet who's anti-Dolan, and I was going to contemplate putting him in as a balance, but I read the stuff and I just feel, I don't know, and I won't go into why, but I ended up not contacting him and stuff, partly because he seems a little unhinged. And it's just like, people are just taking out their knives for Dolan, and I didn't want to be. I just don't think Dolan deserves that.
He doesn't. I mean, look, the guy did the research. The guy went through all the archives, and he doesn't deserve the kind of criticism he's getting. Criticize the book, don't criticize the man.
But he's being criticized because, for example, Linda Moulton Howe wrote the introduction, and I believe he used as part of his research, or he's friends with a woman who, again, another channeler, and. Tim, how many channelers have you interviewed?
0, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't, there's certain, I kind of try to take a journalistic approach, and there's only so far you can go with that kind of story.
Yeah, and exactly. But see, here's a case where, you're doing Dolan, but then you have to, again, face channeling, and you have to ask yourself, and, I know some very, very decent people who say, you know what, I'm not going to just say I know everything, and I think all channelers are crazy. I just,
Right, right.
Yeah.
See, I'm not of that opinion, so,
Yeah, but in fact, one of our columnists,
of course,
Shri and Kira, she is a channeler, so she does write her column for the magazine. So
yeah, they're two of the most decent people that we work with.
And the point is,
what goes on behind the scenes is important.
Yeah, but American history is replete with American presidents relying on channelers and mediums for advice. I mean, Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Pierce, Abraham Lincoln.
Well, Heidi and Spencer, right? I just seriously today, you get much more news on the internet. Heidi, and it's called Spidey, the two of them together. Heidi fired her husband, and she's using an intuitive guy as her new agent because she's saying he's going to take her places. She feels will have an edge. She actually says this. So there you go.
Well, look at Ronald Reagan and Joan Quigley. I mean, in Hollywood, the point is, in Hollywood, it's impossible to make a movie and impossible to make a TV show. It's like a bumblebee is not supposed to fly. So you need every edge you can get. So when Joan Quigley contacted Nancy Reagan and said that she had looked at Ronald Reagan's chart, and had she been advising Nancy, Reagan wouldn't have been where he was to cross paths with John Hinckley. Nancy hired Joan Quigley, and from that point forward, Reagan would have these odd times when he'd fly and odd times to do stuff, and George Bush, the vice president, was appalled. But the fact is, Reagan had a very successful, at least in public, presidency, and survived the awful Iran-Contra thing, which would have brought the whole ball of wax down in flames.
Exactly, yeah. Reagan's still, he's one of those guys you'll see on a coin Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he's got his own aircraft carrier.
Exactly, so, and an airport and everything else, so, you know. He did
That's
all right.
true. Yeah.
What else is there anything else we should talk about? I know we got on a while here. You guys got stuff to do.
Yeah, we do. We're fine.
One of the things that might be fun to talk about is why Bill liked the TV show so much. And when I said the reference to be or not to be, Bill comes from a show business family, which is pretty interesting at the end of the day. His parents tried to keep him from going into show business, and that's why he became a teacher, a college teacher, and that became his profession instead of show business. And so when finally, after all these years, show business came calling, he loved it so much, sadly, because then you get canceled, you know, and you're kind of like, you know, it's like, whoa, now what? But Bill's father was in vaudeville. Had Bill when he was very, very, well, not very, very old. My God, how old was your father when you were born?
I want to say 60, 58, 60,
yeah,
57.
Something like that. So, and now that doesn't seem so old. But, yeah, Bill's...
Now.
I know. That's what, well, so Bill's got two godparents, Jack Benny and George Birnes. And our name is Birnes, his name is Birnes, because the Birnes, both Birnes in show business, changed their Jewish names to not Jewish names.
And that's what you did.
Yeah, well, we
didn't. It was kind of, you know, it's like by the time that I was born, my father had changed the family name, but his name was Kaplan, and George Birnes' name was Birnbaum, Nathan Birnbaum, and the two of them, when they were little kids. We're talking 8 and 9 years old, and on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, where they both lived, they would sing and dance, soft shoe dancing, at all the bars downtown. That was how they made their money. They would dance and people would throw coins, and that's how they began.
This is your dad and George Birnes?
This is my dad and George Birnes. And so it was like Birnes and Kaplan. It was like Birnbaum and Kaplan, Kaplan and Birnbaum. That was the act. But they also, this was, again, in the very early 1900s, they would, turn of the century, they would, New York City was heated by coal, and the company that supplied the coal was called Birnes Brothers. Today it's an oil supplier, but back 100 years ago it was coal. And the kids on the Lower East Side tenements would run after the coal trucks, because as the coal trucks would pull away from the chutes, chunks of coal would fall out, and they'd be on the street. So the kids would follow. Well, my father and George Birnes would wear their father's overcoats, these big, long overcoats, and stuff the coal in the deep pockets. And so the kids would look at them and say, oh, look, there go the Birnes brothers because of the coal truck. That's the name they took. They became the Birnes brothers, and they were dancing. And that was the first vaudeville act that they had all the way back around 1915. That was the first vaudeville act. And then they remained friends for the rest of their lives, the two of them. And that's how we got our name. But my father never really officially, he took the name Birnes, just like George Birnes did. And then when he became an agent first in California, in Los Angeles, then in New York, in Manhattan, he changed the spelling of the name. The day before I was born, my uncle told him, "You better make it a legal change. This kid's not going to have the name Birnes." They walked into City Hall. They went down. They changed the name. That's the only reason my name is Birnes.
Now, why is the George Birnes spelled differently from the Bill Birnes?
Because my father changed the spelling to Birnes when he became an agent to differentiate the spelling from George Birnes' spelling.
Okay.
That's the only reason. George Birnes and he said, look, we got to change the spelling here if you're going to do it officially, because we don't want to be the Birnes brothers. My father said, fine, change the spelling of the name. And the spelling, by the way, has gone through 8 or 9 incarnations. There was B-I-R-N-S, B-Y-R-N-S, depending upon which marquee, which theater marquee you'd look at. When he was on the bill with my mother, they were a vaudeville act together. He would change the names. Passport had another name. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
and,
that is weird. Interesting, yeah.
And they brought, when Jack Benny was a young violin prodigy in Waukegan, Illinois, they brought him into vaudeville, and he changed his name from Benny Kabelski to Jack Benny, and that's how I got my middle name of Jack, was from Jack Benny.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah. Isn't that sad? I mean, it's sad because of the TV thing.
Well, it is sad because they said you can never be in showbiz, you can never be in Hollywood, ever, ever, ever. So I literally followed their instructions. I became
because they didn't want that life for you.
They didn't want the life. I became a doctor, a lawyer, and then finally in Dulce, when we were in the Dulce, New Mexico, I did something for the tribe. They made me an Indian chief.
I was just
I'm a doctor, lawyer, and Indian chief.
And you guys were in the Rock movie there recently, huh?
We were in the movie with Dwayne Johnson, Race to Witch Mountain. That was funny.
Yeah, that was fun.
What was that experience like?
Well, first of all, Dwayne Johnson, Andy Fickman, who is the director, is a subscriber. We've known him for years. He's a really sweet guy. And Andy Fickman was actually born in Roswell.
Oh, wow.
And so he grew up with the whole Roswell myth. So when the time came to do the remake of Witch Mountain, he wanted to give it a UFO spin. But none of the cast, Dwayne Johnson, Dwayne, Carla, Gary Marshall, who actually played me, none of them.
Well, he played
he played a version, played Art Bell, right, or Tim Beckley. None of them had any, even interest in UFOs, right? So what Andy Fickman did was now remember, Disney owns History Channel. So what Andy Fickman did was he got all the DVDs from the episodes and played it for the cast. So after the DVDs were running, and there were certain episodes, I think Bentwaters was the key episode, right?
Yeah.
So they're watching the RAF Bentwaters episode. Dwayne Johnson supposedly stands up and says, "My God, we got to tell the people about this. They're here."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And so you must have met all these folks then.
We did, and Dwayne was really a sweetheart. We have some great photographs of him, but he would walk over and he'd say, "Yeah, he's huge.
Yeah,
I mean, he's really big." So he'd walk over, bent over, he'd say, Are you too happy? Or are you two being treated right? You better be treated right. You tell me anything you need. You come right to me. You wait till I finish my scene. You come to me and say, "Dwayne, I need this," and I'll get it for you. So what happened was he was instrumental. We were with the extras, right? We're just milling around with the extras. He said, these guys, the UFO group was Nancy, myself, Whitley Strieber, George Tsoukalos, Roger Lear. He said, you guys, you should really get a better deal. So he bumps us up to the SAG group.
Oh God, that was so good.
Oh wow.
No, but here's why. The food was, you would not believe the food. My goodness, every single solitary meal, it was gourmet. I mean, it really, really was. I mean, you would just dream of this. And when they opened the lids, you never knew what was underneath of there, and it was so good. Wow. Yeah, that was the upper group. The underneath group had okay stuff.
Well, when we were doing,
and they were squeezing orange juice for you.
That's right. That's right. If you wanted fresh orange juice, hey, go and get it squeezed. You want it? We'll make this. We'll make that.
This is for the extras. Disney.
Yeah. The cast had their own private chef caterer.
Oh wow.
And their own kitchen. And when I think of UFO Hunters, our craft was a jar of Skippy inside a cooler with Kool-Aid. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, just like, take that to the people who are out there who think that you guys are like living high on the hog making UFO Hunters and everything else. It's like, they don't really know how this whole thing works.
They don't, and they get mad, and these are people that even folks we had on the show, first of all, there were so many budget issues that if somebody wanted to be on the show, and I would get these letters from people. I'll do anything to be on the show. People in the field, I'll do anything to be on the show. I will just, Bill, I'm serious. I want to be on the show. And I actually went to, John Greenwald, and I actually went to John, and I said, please get this guy on the show, okay? Do me a favor. He's great. He could do the work, he'd do all the science. So John went to his boss, who was the senior producer, and said, we want to fly so and so from the East Coast for this scene. And the producer said, no way you're flying him from the East Coast. We don't have the money for travel. We're not going to fly anybody, and you find a person who'll work for nothing. And we were like scathed. That person turned out to be so furious, blaming me that he's not on the show.
Yeah, that's something that I've talked to with other people too, in the sense that, like, in these situations, they always want somebody that'll come for free, and so the people that are trying to make a living in this end up being the ones who kind of get fucked out of the
that's right.
Out of the income.
I mean, and here's another case where somebody was on the show, was interviewed, and he's a mutual, you know him, and basically, according to folks, did a good job, and he never made it into the final cut. Maybe he's furious to this day because he does make a lot of noise about it, and it was such a technical thing. This was in the McDonald Files episode with Ann Druffel.
Yeah.
Each of the hunters had a different McDonald file to follow. That was the whole point in season 2, was each of us, Pat had one, Ted had one, I had one, each following a different aspect of a case. Mm-hmm. Pat's was Lonnie Zamora, who, by the way, that's going to be in this issue with UFO Magazine. Pat did the Lonnie Zamora story. Okay? I was doing the story, I forget which one it was. Oh, it was the Heflin photos.
Okay.
And Ted was doing RB-47. But the day that Ted was supposed to, Ted had his own business. He just had a baby, and flying from the East Coast, as I now come to see, I didn't really appreciate what Ted went through in season 2, but flying from the East Coast, flying from Boston, is a nightmare because we had to deal with Southwest Airlines. And Southwest Airlines, oh, look, there's a drop of rain, your flight's canceled.
Yeah.
And so if a flight's canceled in Boston because the flight didn't get in from Florida, and they don't fly out of Logan. They didn't fly to Logan, then they flew out of Manchester.
Yeah.
So I mean, so you can't make the connecting flight at Midway, or the connecting flight at Sky Harbor, or the connecting flight at McCarran in Las Vegas. So you're stuck, right? So they can't do the scene. Well, that's what happened in this one instance. We're in California, and sure enough, so the producer did the interview, and when the time came, when they were in edit, again, this is out of my hands. I'm not the editor of the show. When it came down, they said, oh, well, who was interviewing him from the cast? And they said, well, nobody. Ted wasn't here, so we just did the interview. So we can't have this because the whole format of the show is experts are interviewed by the Hunter cast.
Yeah.
They're not on camera alone. Bingo, it's cut. Wasn't my fault. It was an editorial decision based on something had to fit into the existing format of the show to get through the network editors who were higher than our own editors.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pointedly not asking who was it.
Good.
The way we were earlier, yeah, because, the people we mentioned earlier, the Shandorers and stuff, really aren't in the field. These people are all in the field, and they are sharpening their buoys.
Well, you just can't do anything about those people, I guess, Like I said, I try not to engage them. You guys are higher profile than me, so you get 10 times more shit.
Well,
I've said, to the analogy I make is, I'm from Boston, so everybody around here thinks they can be the general manager of the Boston Red Sox, but they have
especially now.
Exactly. And then they have no idea really, what's going on behind the scenes.
The game that we're all involved here in is trying to find some information out, and I think it's an important game, actually. I think it's a worthwhile way to make a living because we're trying to learn something. And in fact, if I leave the field, it's going to be, I don't know. Yeah, that doesn't have any ending there. Because I can't predict that. But I know that right now I did get burned out once so far, and I pulled myself back in. I got unburned out by kind of avoiding everything for a while.
Yeah, that's kind of how I just deal with the whole thing. And earlier you said, how deep are you into this and everything, and it's just sort of like, Like I've often said on this show when I appear on other shows, once I'm done with my show,
Yeah.
or when I'm working for Coast to Coast or whatever, once I walk away from the computer, that's it. I walk away.
Yeah, you do other. I mean, you do other. I mean, that's why when in the summer we have such a ball with. I mean, I wish I liked Lost. I truly do, because you guys right now are having the fun of liking it, and I loved X-Files, but I didn't get hooked. We didn't have television when Lost first came on, and I didn't get hooked. And I'm telling you, I'm too lost to watch Lost. And I wish that weren't the case, and so I'm trying to rectify that by getting involved with Housewives of New York and stuff like that. Something, I love having something to look forward to.
Right. Every year on our show we do a baseball episode, and it'll have just come out recently now with Rich Dolan and Lauren Coleman and Greg Bishop. And, the point of that whole thing that I stress every year is, like, to the audience is you got to have some kind of other interest, folks.
Yes.
You got to be able to walk away from this. Because if this is your life 24/7, you're just going to be angry and frustrated.
Well, you'll go crazy. I mean, you really will go crazy. There is a mental health issue going on here.
Yeah.
And in fact, what I have so much work to do that my fun has to be quick, and I have to keep my hand in. And one thing I've been telling Jeremy, I'm sort of friends with Jeremy outside of the show as well, outside of the biz as well. And he knows that one of my side interests is crazy. It's this weirdo conspiracy stuff. But weird, deep conspiracy stuff, really cool, interesting stuff, like, every little scene in a movie means something, because if there's a checkerboard floor, it means
it's like
Illuminati.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm always happy playing around with that world, because I hardly ever run into the same names. And you always, it's always a dose of reality when you think you're escaping and playing and having fun, and then suddenly you see somebody's name in that field that is in your so it's an interesting side thing, and that's actually kind of, it refreshes the palate a little bit, but I can kind of keep my hand in a little bit too.
Absolutely,
yeah. So there's that.
Obviously, UFOmag.com is the website, and UFO Magazine keeps plugging away. It sounds like, Bill, you're shopping around some show ideas and stuff. So what do you guys have in the pipeline for you?
Something
big on both sides. So Nancy can talk about the magazine first.
No, it's the radio show.
That's what I was going to say. You talk about the radio show and the magazine, because we're going to be on radio starting March 20th.
Well, we'll see, because I'm kind of on the shy side, I thought, and so I didn't want to be part of the radio thing. But yeah, Bill's going to do a radio show just because he really wants to. But and I'm going to probably be part of it too. Turns out I have more to say than I thought I did, and so.
Well, I like the dynamic between you guys, because Nancy's not afraid to correct you, Bill.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Nancy's never afraid to correct me. Nancy never correct me in the morning, never correct me in the night.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I've listened to Bill on radio shows a lot, and he gets a lot of criticism, and some of it I think is very, very deserved, because he goes off on a tangent. He'll say something like the most important thing that you could ever learn is, and then he'll go off on this enormous tangent, knowing that you're just waiting for him to say, what was the rest of the sentence? And it's just, when we are at dinner and we're out with friends and hanging around, it's fun because we always do pull each other back in on the topic. So I think that might make a fun show. And then ironically, Bill's parents had that kind of show actually. So it's a kind of weird historical big circle that goes around. But that's starting March 20th.
March 20th, yeah. March 20th, and I think it's Clark Radio, Overnight AM.
No. It's, Well,
yeah, it's Clark Radio is the name of the network on Overnight AM.
But you can look up, the fellow's name is Land Fear, who's going to be kind of hosting us, and we're still in the process. We don't know the ins and outs of this yet. We're still in the process of figuring out how we're going to make the archives available, because he runs a daily show, like a show every night, and it's live and it's Streamlink and stuff. But for our little audience, if you're not archived, then you don't exist. I mean, you have to be archived.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we're only going to be on. Yeah, it has to be, because it's a record. We will be interviewing people that will only be on the show and have never been ever on a show before, and you want to be able to go back and refer to that. So I'm looking into right now, I've got a server, so I'll be putting, and that's why I want to talk to you about technical. We'll be putting the stuff up, making the archives available with, it's once a week, so it shouldn't be too big a deal.
Yeah.
And and because we've been book packagers for 27 years, I think 27 years now, it's over 25 years, and we have a lot of stuff beside UFOs. So it's not going to be just UFOs, which is why I feel a little guilty, talking about it on your show. But
don't worry about it. I'm the least competitive person in that regard. So don't
which is very healthy, very healthy. And besides, the competition is such. All you have to do if you're competitive is just show up for work every day. Try that. That's the hardest job of all. And so, the world needs people. The world needs more voices and more magazines, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So.
All right, so you got the radio show coming up, and UFO Mag is obviously, like I said, still plugging away. And it's doing
well. The big news that Nancy's working on right now is UFO E-Mag.
Oh, nice.
Well, yeah. Well, see, here's the thing, and just real quickly, I'm a Macintosh fiend, and I believe, and you can quote me, I believe this new thing, this iPad, is going to change everybody's life. And I'm making a version of the magazine for the iPad. I have to, because it's what I want to carry around with me. It's where I want to read, and eventually, it's where magazines are going to go, basically.
Yeah.
Print is dying like a bad actor on a stage,
Yeah, so you guys are going in the digital route with UFO Magazine.
Well, we are already, of course, with PDFs and stuff, but that's not what anybody wants. At the end of the day, you don't want to just flip pages, pretend pages. That's not the way it's going. So I'm designing something entirely different. That's and that'll be available on the iPad and the iPhone. But I'm too old to really read on the iPhone. It's got to be bigger. So, and that's the other thing. So I'd say to you, if you want to look at the future, look at this iPad thing when it comes out. It comes out April 3rd, and I'm standing in line.
It's gonna be very exciting. And the other thing is, yes, we are pitching UFO Hunters to other networks as the UFO Hunters show. Ideally, with Pat and Ted and Kevin, if we can do it make it a foursome, we'll see. And there are some other shows that we're working on. I'm actually writing up the character sets for the reality shows this weekend. So ideally, within a few weeks, we'll be at various cable companies, production companies in New York, doing some pitching. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Sounds great. Well, I can't thank you enough, guys, for coming on the show. I had a lot of fun. I felt like I didn't have much to say because you guys just sort of ran with it. Nancy, you should be an interviewer. You were you're really holding Bill's feet to the fire there a few times. So
that was my first job. So that's thank you.
Well, it was just great to get a chance to have you both on the show here and to give people sort of, like I said, an experience of what it would be like if we were all just kind of hanging around, which is really what this interview was. So I hope folks enjoyed it, and I think they did, and hopefully they check out all this stuff that you guys have going on.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thus concludes our interview here with Bill and Nancy Birnes. Big, huge thanks to them for coming on the show and for indulging me on the Dinner with the Birnes concept. I think it worked out really well. I think it gave folks a real taste of what Future Theater, their podcast, is all about. I hope folks go and check that out. You can find out more info on that at the website www.futuretheater.com, all one word, futuretheater.com. And of course you want to check out the website ufomag.com for all the latest on UFO Magazine, UFO Hunters, and all the stuff that Bill and Nancy Birnes have brewing. I'm going to make the quick transition here now into our post-show bonus interview, little stop and chat with Micah A. Hanks. Let me give you a little information on Micah A. Hanks for those folks who have not heard him on the program before. He was on BOA Audio way back on April 13th, 2009 during BOA Audio Season 4. Here is his bio. Micah A. Hanks has researched all things strange since a very young age, beginning when he was still in grade school. Since that tender age of discovery, he has grown to work towards documenting the world's bizarre mysteries, having contributed articles and stories to Fate Magazine, 40 in Times, Mysteries Magazine, UFO Magazine, and others. He's also had the pleasure of working with the Travel Channel for their Weird Travels television program, as well as the History Channel's Guts and Bolts during investigations as an investigator with the Lemur Paranormal Research Team. His adventures have taken him to all kinds of amazing places, from snow-capped mountaintops in the middle of July, hiking through the Rockies of Montana in search of Bigfoot, to a haunted 19th century jail in historic Charleston, South Carolina. He studied martial arts in Chicago with practitioners who performed the ancient art of the death touch. And while he was there, he also visited Resurrection Cemetery, famous location of Resurrection Mary, one of America's most enduring hauntings. He trudged through the mountains of Cherokee, North Carolina, in search of bujums, and what Cherokee natives described to him as the woolly ones, stomped through the foothills of Tennessee in search of the southern skunk ape, and struck the hills in the heart of Amish country in search of Ohio's grassman. He's got a new book out called Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. That's what you're going to be hearing about here in our Stop and Chat. Micah A. Hanks' website is www.gralienreport.com. Let me spell that one for you because it's a bit confusing. Gralien report.com. Once again, Gralien report.com. Check it out. And without any further ado, let's roll into the interview here. Micah A. Hanks talking about his new book, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule, in a post-show Stop and Chat on BOA Audio, Season 5.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat here for you this week, a little Stop and Chat from our old friend Micah A. Hanks. Many of you heard him last season on BOA Audio. If you haven't heard him on the show before, go back and check out that BOA Audio episode after you've heard the Stop and Chat from Micah. He's hanging out here at the end of the show. It's kind of like an after-hours session here on the program, so loosen your tie, folks, and, smoke them if you got them. Now that the bulk part of the show's over, we're going to chill out here a little bit here with Micah. And I'm really excited because he has this book that has just come out, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. And I can't read. Oh, wait, here it is, right here, yeah. The Search for Sentient Intelligence from Other Worlds. And it's really just been released, in the last 3 weeks or so. So, I mean, it's super fresh and very exciting, and I'm hoping to get my hands on it soon. But instead of waiting, because then I have to order it, and then I have to read it, and then I have to schedule the interview, and that could take a while, folks. I mean, I got a lot going on. Micah has a lot going on. So I want to get him on the show here at the end of the program to talk about this book and get the word out to the BOA Audio listeners so they can place their orders as soon as possible. So, Micah, welcome back to BOA Audio, longtime friend of the program. Anytime we have the opportunity to speak with you, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back, buddy.
Oh, gosh, I tell you, well, the pleasure is all mine, as you know. And, Tim, oh, gosh, I tell you, these introductions you give just keep getting better and better.
And I don't even practice them. That's the truth. I really don't. So
you're just that good, right?
I'm just that caring. I just care that much about my guests. They become friends, and that's how I kind of try to do the show, By the time we're done with the interview, I hope we're buddies. That's kind of my attitude with every guest. So
we are certainly that, yes.
Absolutely. You are the original scallywag, as they say. Oh, I turned it around on you there, didn't I?
You did, yeah. That's my nickname for Joshua Warren is Scallywag. Yeah.
That's right. We dropped it on him during the interview earlier this season, so we figured we'll bring it all together again like an episode of Lost. So tell me about this book. How did it come together, and what's it all about? I'm very intrigued by this because you've got seemingly two conflicting sort of ideas in a way, the magic, the mysticism, and the molecule. It's like, whoa, this is science, this is the occult, this is, what's going on with this book?
Well, the way I feel about science in general is that all things that appear supernatural to us, to humankind, eventually, if we were able to take on some kind of a fundamental understanding of their inner workings, it would become natural. I mean, all things were this at some point, all things observable in nature. And that's what science really is all about, is just the process of taking the observable environment around us, bringing those things to terms kind of on a mechanical level so that we can better understand and, in a technological sense, manipulate those things. So, the book, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule, deals with what I guess have been called variously spiritual technologies. And, of course, the kind of primary focus of the book is altered states of consciousness. And it's not a how-to book. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. First and foremost, it's not a how-to book, but it is a book that looks, I guess in kind of a scholarly way, at the way that magical practices and then mystical arts and things like that, and then also physical entheogens and quote-unquote molecules that are able to elicit psychoactive effects have been used over time to elicit altered states of consciousness by different cultures. And it's fascinating to me the way that once I got really into the nitty-gritty and began digging into the subject matter that ended up becoming this book, that when, no matter what the quote-unquote method of entry is, that a person for a religious purpose or anything else for that matter has used something such as a magical tool or a mystical practice or an entheogenic molecule to enter an altered state, there are parallels, and it's something experiential about the human condition, so to speak, that all these experiences tend to kind of relate to one another. Now, granted, I know that there's got to be some sort of a psychological, archetypical thing that's involved, but by the same token, I think that there's also some sort of external capacity in which certain flavors of things come through in these kinds of circumstances, whether it be you have a very vivid dream or you have an out-of-body experience, something like sleep paralysis, or you use meditation to enter a very, very, very altered, enlightened kind of state of mind, or, like many people in South America and even through the American Southwest have done with peyote and ayahuasca and things like that. They've actually used, entheogens, God-releasing plants that contain psychedelic molecules as part of their religious practice. All these kinds of things instigate some sort of a interaction with what has very variously been called spirit intelligences, angels, aliens. I mean, my gosh, you could go all day with your different list of classifications, but there is some sort of kind of a similarity between the experiences. That's what my book looks at, and I try and tie together some of those parallels in the way that they relate to one another.
Yeah, so like we're talking about how people sometimes use DMT and then they have weird interactions with weird creatures and stuff, like the elf stories, that kind of thing.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, Terence McKenna, of course, popularized that term, fractal elves, and of course the elves didn't resemble little like Peter Pan type characters or anything like that. I think he described them as self-dribbling basketballs. He also called them tykes because he said it sounded like little kids kind of talking in real high-pitched voices that sounded like they'd been recorded on a tape recorder and then sped up. So it's an interesting notion that there might be quote-unquote beings that exist in a DMT hyperspace like Terence McKenna and Dr. Rick Strassman and people have put out there. And that, of course, has become, in some ways, almost sadly, the primary focus of this book, so far as people, who've taken interest in it, who are reviewing and who ask me questions about it. It's one piece of the pie. But certainly I think that the use of entheogenic molecules to elicit an altered state of consciousness is going to be the most avant-garde and taboo, especially in Western society, in terms of three, techniques or staples that are listed in the book. The book is broken into three, portions, each consisting of several chapters, and those are the magic, the mysticism, and the molecule sections of the book. But, I knew that going into it, that, writing about entheogenic molecules and people claiming to see space aliens when they took these kinds of things, I knew that would be controversial. I don't advocate the use of psychedelics, like that for recreational use, and I certainly would never tell someone, if you want to go see an alien, you need to go take drugs. I've never even done these things myself, and that's what shocks so many people about the book. They're like, you've never done drugs, and yet you write this book about these things. But, I did want to try and maintain some degree, at least, of journalistic integrity. And so I hope that, by maintaining objective and keeping myself outside the circle, so to speak, I've been able to do that with the book, and certainly that is one part of it, yeah.
Did you look at white powdered gold, that whole thing at all?
Oh, monatomic gold?
Yeah.
That and alchemy in general, those are very interesting subjects. And I had books on monatomic gold and alchemy, and I actually corresponded a good bit with my buddy Jim Mars about monatomic gold during the writing process. Now, I didn't put a whole lot of that into the book, although that was a suggestion that many people made. But and this is the whole thing. There are so many different parallels that I could have tied in with the subject matter that made it into the book. Another one that would have been good would have been Julian Jaynes and his notion of the breakdown of the bicameral mind, and the notion essentially that the two hemispheres of the brain almost acted independent of one another in earlier humans. So this stuff, and the way it relates to altered states of consciousness and the strange kinds of almost psychic things that occur to people even today. There's so many avenues that I could have gone down, but trying to keep it as direct and to the punch, so that directly, on point with the subject matter, I had to I had to omit a few of those things. But Yeah, monatomic gold is certainly something that's very interesting, and I guess there are certain ways that would tie in with this, yes, as well as alchemy in general, especially in the magic capacity.
Looking at the synopsis here a little bit, I'm reminded of a previous conversation that I'd had with Marie Jones, and just that, I'm looking at the words ancient magicians and thinking about those, cults or whatever you want to call them, groups of secret type groups in the ancient times. And is this the sort of knowledge you think that they might have had? Because, there's two sort of schools of thought, and they're probably, two sort of different avenues of knowledge. The stuff that's now, knowledge that we take for granted, like geometry and stuff that they kept secret back then, that was like, now it's like, oh, geez, why were you keeping pi a secret? That's not worth keeping secret. But but then there's probably other stuff that, maybe is, still secret to us, that is within the realm of what we're talking about here.
Right, yeah, and when it comes especially to the mystery cults, like the Pythagorean mystery cults, and especially those, in ancient Greece, with their number systems, their concept of a monad, which was kind of, the one, which represented the universe, I do delve into that quite a bit in the book, as well as the ancient Greek practice of the psychomantium that was later popularized more recently, very recently, actually, within the last few decades, by Dr. Raymond Moody. He talks about it a good bit in his book, Reunions, and I actually, as you know, right now, I'm almost, I'm about to enter a lemur meeting here with Joshua and some of the guys and whatnot, and here at the lemur laboratory, we actually have a psychomantium that we've built, and all that is really is just a very dimly lit room that has a mirror across the room from where you, the participant, or of course, if we wanted to go back to the ancient Greek cults, you'd call yourself the initiate. So to borrow that term, the initiate would sit in the chair and they'll stare into the indirect optic depth of the mirror. And this has an effect very similar to the Gonsfeld effect, where you place ping pong ball halves over your eyes and you're able to kind of enter a theta state. And then once you can kind of get your brain functioning on a different level of consciousness, this is where strange and what are perceived to be psychic effects begin to happen. So certainly the ancient Greeks and the mystery cults did that, and other people who practiced quote unquote magic throughout history did this also. And actually, bringing it back to the idea of monatomic gold and trying to use certain elements to create gold. I guess I do talk about that some with regard to John Dee and Edward Kelly, who were also trying to do that. That was, I think, one of Edward Kelly's great aspirations, whereas John Dee really wanted to just, take it from the perspective of contacting sentient intelligences. Edward Kelly, of course, I think thought that maybe in some capacities he could get rich off of it as well, and he ended up being hired by people who had hoped that his prowess with the magical arts would actually allow him to learn to distill, elements of time and space and create wealth from those. And I think history tells us he failed in some capacity, although some people think he did really well. Aleister Crowley really, held Edward Kelly in very high regard. But, yeah, you could look at all these ancient magical practices and things like that, and again, especially the early ones like we talked about in the mystery cults and things, and those elements do exist there.
So where do you think all this stuff is going? That, to tie it back a little bit to sort of what I was talking about, do you think that knowledge then at some point got kind of lost in a way, that now we have these different people who have come along and tried to sort of pick up where these ancients knew what was going on?
Right, yeah, the knowledge of the ancients. There seems to be this kind of this notion in modern occult circles and things that there may have been ancient races that existed here on Earth long ago. And it's compelling because once you get into, some of these reports of finding, ancient microscopic nanotechnology embedded in rock and things like that, in parts of Russia and Mongolia and other parts, of the world, there does seem to be evidence that there was more going on, on our planet in ancient times. And I'm talking about ancient times that predated our concept of early man and prehistory. There have been wonderful books that have been written about this by people like Brad Steiger, so I don't have to get into that right now. But the notion that there were other cultures, and that they had, whether it be a magical or a mystical or even a technological prowess that does not exist today, that is something that kind of exists in the fringes of occult and esoteric studies even today. So I do hear that a lot, and I've been asked that question before. are there great secrets, that have existed and that are somehow they've been passed down by secret societies or in ancient texts that have been found? And are there people today who are trying to tap into those, spirit technologies to try and use these to contact other worlds and things like that? The short answer, I think, is yes. I think that the psychomantium that I've mentioned represents that in some capacity. I think another representation of that would probably be ecstatic body postures that have been practiced by the Eastern mystics for years, because these things also tend to elicit altered states of consciousness in conjunction with meditation and things like that. And then finally, if you want to look at, in the South American jungles where there are ayahuasca, the very powerful yage made from the Banisteriopsis caapi liana plant. Actually, liana vine is the short name for it. But when paired with certain plants there that grow in the jungle, certain varieties of the ayahuasca actually have plants that contain DMT also, and the active ingredients in the liana vine allow the DMT to be broken down and become orally active, and so these people can drink this tea and have these powerful mystic experiences. You have people today like Rick Strassman, who at his Cottonwood Research Center that he's either has already established or is in the process of putting that together. I think he's wanting to do an ayahuasca study there and once again, try and measure these effects, on people today using spirit technologies that have been used for centuries or maybe thousands of years elsewhere in the world. So, yeah, I do think that there are aspects of cultures that have existed for a long time that people today, for whatever reason, are trying to tap back into. They're trying to, I don't want to say it's getting back to the primitive, because these may not have always been things practiced by primitive cultures per se. We don't know. I think there are a lot of things about Earth's history that that are still shrouded in so much mystery that we don't understand exactly what was going on. But nonetheless, we have these aspects of humanity and culture that do indicate that there's something else going on. The ancients used them, and yes, people today, I think, are trying to tap into those uses and finding modern uses for those things as well.
Yeah, and like the natural question is like, where do you see all this going? And it does sound like it might be some kind of marriage to get even more into alliteration, some kind of marriage between the magic and the mysticism with the molecule.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that's the thing is that whether, you can separate those three things, which I did, I guess, in some capacity in the book, but, when you buy a copy of Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule, the thing you have to keep in mind is that I'm trying to make the association between all these things. And when I'm in the magic section of the book talking about a very vivid and very frightening experience that a friend of mine had in the Psychomantium, and as a matter of fact, actually, not the chapter that deals with the actual experience, but the chapter that precedes that chapter in the book, I've posted in a blog post at my website, the Gralien Report, and people can go to that and you can actually read a sample chapter of the book that describes in detail the Psychomantium and how it works. But in the chapter where I'm detailing this experience, my friend, who's actually a lemur investigator as well as myself, while I'm detailing this experience that he had, I'm also going into the effects that, something, a psychedelic tryptamine like dimethyltryptamine has on the mind. And what's interesting about dimethyltryptamine specifically is, although it is an illegal drug, and it is a very powerful hallucinogen that, it has, physical effects on the human body as well, and it's not the kind of thing that's really safe to play around with. This is also a molecule, a tryptamine, that is produced in the human body. We hypothesize that it is produced in the pineal gland. We don't know for certain, but we seem to think that that's kind of where this stuff emanates from in the human body. So, obviously, to be produced in our bodies, it has to have some sort of effect on the human body that controls, bodily functions and mental capacities in some way or another. We don't understand to the full extent how that is. But I wonder sometimes if, when people have these almost hallucinatory kind of experiences, these vivid experiences through meditation or through using something like a psychomantium to evoke an altered state of consciousness, is it actually tapping into kind of an internal release of something like DMT? It's produced in our bodies, so, how can we rule out that isn't actually what's behind some of these magical and mystical experiences that people report having? So, you're right. I think it does look at kind of a marriage between these things, and what we're seeing more and more is that there is an interrelationship between them, although we can try and categorize them and classify them aside from one another. There are interrelationships between them that can't be ignored, and we're just beginning to scrape the very surface of what those interrelationships actually are.
Yeah, I think that's where it's all going to head eventually, some kind of scientific unlocking of the mysticism part to it.
And it's going to get scary, you know. I'll warn you, it's not going to be pretty, I'm sure, as we learn more and more about this. But it will be a learning experience for humanity, nonetheless.
Hey, I cheer for the story, Micah, so
yeah.
If it's scary, that's fine with me. I got nothing to lose.
Right, I know that. That's why we're in this business, right, Tim?
Exactly. I'll keep you just like 5 more minutes. Is that cool?
That's fine.
All right. You got to just share this little story here, and if you and tie it in to the book and what you're talking about here in the book, and we'll have the linkage up to the excerpt that you've posted at the Guerrillium Report. But I'm reading it here, and I'm looking at it. I gave it a once over earlier, and I forgot to make the point about this. This story here about Michael Jackson.
Oh yeah.
And his room in the Neverland Ranch with walls covered in mirrors, which is kind of creepy here because the office that I'm sitting in, the Bill of America Audio headquarters, is covered in mirrors. That's kind of the decorative motif. So I have my own mirror room, but I've never had any.
Modern mystic. You're the modern mystic, Tim. Yeah. But well, with regard to Michael Jackson having a room full of mirrors, I think it's funny, first of all, because there's that song, you know, I'm looking at the man in the mirror.
Yeah.
and I make that point in the book. It's funny because the story that Michael Jackson told. And I think actually that this is in the chapter that I've put up, you know, for free on the website. So yeah, go to the Guerrillium Report and you can read more about this. But the story was that Michael Jackson claimed he had a room in Neverland Ranch that was covered in mirrors, and when he would go in that room, he'd kind of go in there to relax and kind of meditate. And he said that the ghost of Liberace would come into, you know, would appear in this room and would talk to Michael Jackson and would interact him. And apparently they knew each other before Liberace's death. And Michael Jackson said that Liberace was kind of like a mentor, kind of a guardian angel, I think was the term he used, especially after Liberace's death. And he said that he called him Lee, and he'd say, you know, I'd go in that room and Lee would appear. And that's where he would talk to me. That's where I hear him. And he said that Liberace even gave him permission to record his theme song, I'll Be Seeing You. So, you know, it's a pretty bizarre story, but, you know, take it for what it is. I think it's pretty interesting that, you know, like so many others have said about, you know, perceiving spirits of the dead in mirrors. Michael Jackson also had his experience, and it wasn't just that he saw strange things. I mean, he saw a specific individual who he had known in life, and he would go into a room full of mirrors in his own home and would have these experiences. And he seemed to allude to it like this happened more than once. Like he could, anytime he was kind of having a hard time or was feeling down, he'd go in this room full of mirrors and talk to Liberace's ghost. So it's not the kind of thing you hear about every day, but there are many other stories of people using psychomantiums and other mirrored services, you know, through scrying and things like that to elicit very similar experiences.
Yeah, and it goes kind of back to and I'm not being trivial about this, but it goes back to, you know, like the whole the Snow White thing, you know, and the mirror.
Yeah.
You know, sounds like something that's been a long-standing esoteric, you know, alchemical type tradition, if you will.
You're absolutely right. That's not being trivial at all. I mean, you know, Snow White, you know, mirror, mirror on the wall. What that is, I mean, you know, it's tapping into the folkloric aspect of reflective surfaces and the strange effects that they can have on the mind. You know, people, I think that, you know, the urban legend of Bloody Mary and things like that, you know, kind of tap into this as well. Raymond Moody had said that he had actually found Greco-Egyptian kind of, I guess, documents of some sort, you know, scrolls that described. He didn't find these himself. I'm assuming that, you know, that they were discovered and that he knew of them. Although I'm sure, you know, Raymond Moody, I've met him, and I could see him being a bit of a swashbuckler at times in his life. But Moody had, you know, had described, you know, looking at these ancient documents that talked about links between, you know, the Greeks and what they were doing, you know, apparently with this necromantian, I think is what they called it, which, you know, became what Moody calls the psychomantium. And then Egyptians who were also engaging in very similar mirror-gazing practices. And when I say scrying, again, you know, talking about John Dee and Edward Kelly, This is the literal practice of, staring into either what was called a shoe stone, or sometimes I think that there was actually a black obsidian mirror that Cortez had brought back from Central America that John Dee actually used in some of his scrying sessions, where he and Edward Kelly would communicate with these Enochian angels. And, although Edward Kelly was the one who primarily was doing the actual interaction with these spirit intelligences, John Dee himself also claimed on at least maybe a couple of occasions in his life to have physically seen an angel that he called Medini, and to have interacted with him and to have actually corresponded himself. But for the most part, he actually used Edward Kelly kind of as a conduit, as a medium to the spirit realm. And many of these people throughout history used reflective surfaces to evoke these experiences.
Unbelievable stuff, but crazy at the same time. I love it. I love it. All right, we'll wrap it up here, because I know that now you're probably going to be charged extra dues or something at the by the lemur people. Let me get
That's
This is what I really like about you, Mikey. You really seem to dig up a lot of nuggets that I'd never heard before, and I have a feeling that that's the case here with magic, mysticism, and the molecule. And I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a copy of it and having you on here for a longer, full-length session to discuss the book. Like I said, you really managed to dig up some stuff that just completely blow my mind. And I'm like, where does he find this stuff? But you do it. You're a very diligent and hardworking researcher, so
thank you.
I look forward to seeing what you've got in the book here, because I have a feeling once you've gotten your chance now here to stretch your legs out and put it together in a book, it's going to be just mind-blowing stuff.
Excellent. Well, you know what? Anytime I'm ready to come on, we'll do that, and we'll delve into these and other mysteries.
Absolutely.
Yes, that'll be something I'll certainly look forward to.
Well, how can people get their hands on magic, mysticism, and the molecule?
Well, you can get it right through my website. If you go to the Gralien Report, GRALIEN reports.com, right there at the top of the page to the right, you'll see Buy Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule, and I've got a link right there at the top of the right-hand column. All you have to do is click on the book itself, and that'll take you directly to an e-store that I've set up there through the Gralien Report where you can buy the book. And if you're interested in getting signed copies, you can also just email me at info@gralienreport.com, and I will be happy to have some information sent to you about how you can order a signed copy directly from me.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, folks, you heard it from him right here. You want to pick up Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. It sounds really good. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it, as I said, and getting the chance to dig into it, and hopefully in the future dig into it with you and talk more about it. But until then, get ahead of the curve, my friends, and pick up the book so we can all talk about it in the future here on the show. Micah, thanks for coming back on the show. I really appreciate it. And, best of luck with this book. I hope it's the first of many more tales of the bizarre and unexplained to come from you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon, my man.
That does it for this week's edition of BOA Audio Season 5. Big, super huge thanks to Micah A. Hanks for coming on for the post-show stop and chat, as well as Bill and Nancy Birnes for giving us so much time in the main interview for the program. You can find out more from Micah A. Hanks at GralienReport.com, GRALIEN report.com. Check that out for more information on Micah's new book, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. And as we noted at the end of the Bill and Nancy Birnes interview, you want to check out their websites, www.ufomag.com, and the website for their new podcast is futuretheater.com. Pretty simple, all one word, futuretheater.com. You can also find links to that via ufomag.com. Moving right along now, it's time for BOA Audio listener feedback, and we've got 2 emails here this week, kind of long ones. The first one comes from Betty, no hometown listed, just Betty, and here's what she has to say. I found your website a couple of months ago and have been listening to lots of your archived shows. You do a real nice job interviewing people. This morning I was listening to your 12/28/09 show, in which you used Lady Gaga's song Poker Face. You seem to be pretty on top of things, so maybe you used that song in spite of the controversy that surrounds Lady Gaga and the meaning behind that song in particular. In case you weren't aware of her bizarre behavior, you might want to check out an article at vigilanttcitizen.com or check out this highly recommended but lengthy series theindustryexposed.com. Several episodes feature info on Lady Gaga, and all in all, it is full of astounding information. Cheers, Betty. Thank you for writing in, Betty. Ironically enough, I've been trying to track down the Vigilant Citizen guy to do an interview on the whole Lady Gaga conspiracy, if you will, and haven't heard back from him yet. If we do get him on the show, I'm sure you'll be hearing from him. I am hoping to talk to him because I'm really a big Lady Gaga fan and would love to know more about his thoughts on this whole mind control Illuminati aspect of her work. I will say that, not to give away too much, but next week's guest will be R. Gary Patterson, a powerhouse researcher of the occult and esoteric connections with rock and roll, and we do delve into the whole Lady Gaga conspiracy theory on next week's episode. So you definitely want to tune in to the program for that if you want some more Lady Gaga stuff. With regards to why I chose the song, quite simply, there wasn't any insider reference involved there. Since it was the year in review episode, I tried to pick a song that was pretty hugely popular in the zeitgeist for 2009, and Poker Face was definitely one of those songs. So there wasn't any real conspiracy theory on my end related to using Poker Face, any more than there might have been a conspiracy theory for me using Susan Boyle on the second half of the year in review episode. So altogether, Betty, tune in to the program next week. R. Gary Patterson will get his thoughts on the Lady Gaga conspiracy. The next email comes from Michael in Huntsville, Alabama, and here's what he has to say. I just discovered your show. I don't know why I haven't heard it earlier. I'm really enjoying it. I've been listening to the show on my iPhone, and why would anyone use anything else? And it has a setting to listen to podcasts at half, 1, or 2 times normal speed. I usually listen to podcasts on the 2 times normal speed because usually everyone is perfectly understandable at that speed, and I can get through a 2-hour show in an hour that way. I find it interesting that at double speed you often have odd clicks and whirls in the background. It's almost, but not quite, voices. It's kind of freaky. I started listening to your Stanton Friedman Holiday special, which was amazing. For the rest of the season, I was hooked. I even went back and picked a few back episodes to catch, and the 1, or should I say 3, with Bruce Rux was amazing. Best podcast ever. Keep up the good work, Michael in Huntsville, Alabama. There you go. That was Michael's email. Thank you for running in, Michael. I do sometimes myself listen to the program at 2 times normal speed, but usually that's these voiceover parts at the end, just so I can hurry up and edit them. I don't know about the odd clicks and whirls, but as anyone who's been following the program for a while knows, we use pretty much the most Luddite form of podcasting that there is. I don't know anything about Skype or mixing boards or anything like that. We use old school style of recording, but I kind of like it that way, although I understand why it does not always transition well to the digital realm. As such, I'm sure all those odd clicks and whirls are the result of our old school style of podcasting. I hope you don't try and decipher those mysterious voices, because then you're just going to get into all kinds of weird mind-bending stuff that probably isn't even in there at all. Almost certainly isn't even in there at all. So don't do anything like that, Michael. Thank you for your props on the program. Stanton Friedman Holiday Special, one of my favorite shows every year. And the Bruce Rux trilogy, still getting emails to this day, my friends. I'm hoping to get Bruce back on the show in season 5 at some point, hopefully soon, to talk about his first book. I still try and keep in touch with him, even though I've been having a terribly busy schedule here this last month. And he's doing well, and I'm hoping that he's looking forward to a return appearance on BOA Audio, hopefully in the not-too-distant future. So there you go. Thanks for writing in, Michael. I really appreciate it. Glad you've discovered the show. You definitely want to dig into the archive. There's tons of episodes in there that I'm sure you have not checked out yet that will blow your mind. So do that, and you'll have a wealth of BOA Audio to experience while you wait for the next episodes to get posted as Season 5 rolls onward. Thanks for writing in, Michael and Betty. Your feedback was hugely appreciated. And if you're out there listening right now and you'd like to be a part of BOA Audio listener feedback, there's 3 main ways to do it. Let me go through them real quick for you. You can write to boaaudio@hotmail.com. or go to BinnallOfAmerica.com, BINNALL of America.com, and click the contact button. And the final method is to go to the official BOA forum, the US of E.com, THEUSOFE.com. That's where you can find me and a whole bunch of other wild and crazy guys and gals talking about the world of the paranormal and the world of pop culture. We're always looking for new folks to join up at the forum, and we're always welcoming newcomers with open arms. The US of E, it's the place to be, the official BOA forum. So those are the three methods: email, contact button, and forum. Also, you can hit me up on Facebook, MySpace, or Twitter. Any of those methods puts your correspondence into my hands for a future edition of BOA Audio Listener Feedback. Up next, we thank the amazing BOA staff: Leslie, Chiron, Regan Lee, Joe V, Tina Senna, Rochelle Hawks, Richard Thomas, A.M. Murphy, Marla Pena, our contributing cartoonist Andy Carolin, and our webmaster Jeremy Boston. As we noted at the end of the baseball special, this team of awesome writers carried BOA for the last month while BOA Audio was on hiatus. Way too much stuff for me to plug here from the BOA staff. I'll just say that everybody on the team contributed at least one new piece to the website throughout the month of March. Other folks on there had 2 or 3 pieces even. So there's tons of stuff to read at BOA, covering a wealth of different paranormal genres, a lot of stuff which falls through the cracks and does not get picked up here on the audio program. As such, I'll use the mantra we've been saying week in and week out here at the end of the show. If you're only listening to BOA Audio and you're not reading the columns at Binnall of America, you're only getting half the story. BOA, make it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. Tax season is right around the corner, and I'm going to get hit hard, my friends. So I'm going to turn it over to you here now and ask you to make a donation to BOA and help us weather the latest financial storm, which is going to hit the mothership in a matter of a few weeks. How do you do that? How do you make a donation and help us out? That's simple. You go to Binnall of America or the BOA Audio archive page and click the PayPal button. No donation is too small, and all donations go towards Binnall of America and BOA Audio to help keep the whole enterprise up and running, freely available, and commercial-free for all of our great readers and listeners the world over. I already teased it earlier here in the end cap, but let me plug what we've got for you next week on BOA Audio. Our guest is R. Gary Patterson, author of a number of books, including Paul is Dead, as well as his more recent book, Take a Walk on the Dark Side, Rock and Roll Myths, Legends, and Curses. For those of you who don't know of R. Gary Patterson, he is a powerhouse investigator of the connection between rock music and the esoteric, and he's been one of the most frequently requested guests from the BOA Audio listeners over the years. So it was only a matter of time before RGP came to BOA, and it's happening next week on the program. Don't turn your nose up at the pop culture theme, my friends, because this is some riveting stuff. We're going to be covering the occult influences on Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones, the mind control rock star meme, backwards tracks found in music both intentionally and imagined, the Paul is Dead conspiracy theory regarding Paul McCartney, the mysterious deaths of Brian Jones, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, and Jim Morrison, as well as a ton of other fascinating connections between pop culture and the paranormal. Our Gary Patterson is a masterful storyteller and really someone I could listen to all day long. It is a wildly entertaining edition of BOA Audio. I'm sure it's going to stand amongst the signature interviews here on Season 5 as R. Gary Patterson finally arrives on BOA Audio. That's next week on the program. It should be hitting your podcast feeds and the website probably around Wednesday or Thursday. Don't hold me to that. We're in the end game here of Season 5, so expect things to be a little bit sporadic, but at the same time, expect some wild and huge interviews here on BOA Audio as we roll through to the finale of Season 5. And on that note, we close the book on another edition of BOA Audio. I didn't harp on this at the end of the baseball special because I know that a fair amount of the hardcore listeners, even those folks who are tuning in this far into the show, just don't tune into the baseball special. I fully understand that and can respect that, but I know that the true hardcore, serious, maniac members of BOA Nation are still listening to me speak right now, and I want to thank all those folks out there. You guys are the fuel that drives the machine. You guys are the ones who make this whole thing possible. So I want to thank you for your support of the program. Thanks for picking us back up again after our hiatus. I never worry too much about taking the downtime because I know the BOA Audio listeners are fervent and feverish and ready to rock and roll as soon as the new episodes are posted, no matter how long the wait. That's because you guys are the best. Thank you once again for making BOA Audio a part of your esoteric audio playlist. Until next time, this is Tim Banal, thanking you for listening and signing off.